Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, November 8th, 2017 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mrs. Larson.
Here.
And I am here.
Thank you, and the meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is community comment. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Would anyone like to make a comment tonight? Any comment? Hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda, item 5. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, school board announcements. Are there any announcements tonight?
There's a craft fair at the high school on Saturday? I'm sorry, yes, thank you, it's at the middle school, don't show up at the high school. And then the fall play, is that starting tonight? Tonight, so that's running through the weekend, so.
If you show up at the high school on the weekend, you'll be involved in a wrestling tournament.
So you have your options.
They're varied, yes.
Thank you. I'd just like to announce that this morning, I attended with Dr. Miller a Chamber of Commerce networking breakfast. I know all the school board members get invited to these now, and we went because Rachel Fredericks, our community experience coordinator, was speaking today, and she did a nice job, and she mentioned how many partnerships she has gotten from the community, and some of those were from some of the attendees at this breakfast. And after she spoke, introductions were made, and there were some nice comments made about her, and then she did pick up a few more contacts from those guests at the breakfast. Did you want to say anything, Dr. Miller?
No, it was, no, and then I start talking. They were very complimentary of what Rachel's doing, very impressed, and Rachel did a really nice job, Mr. Volo, speaking to the community about our partnership, so I felt really proud of that.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to remind the board, Monday night at the high school is our Pathways to Your Future night event, starting at 6 p.m. We've had over 600 people sign up for the event so far, so it's going to be a great event.
I see it's full, but can we just show up? Or?
You can just show up.
Oh,
yes.
it's just, says a ticket required.
Thank you. Okay, item 7, school board calendar. We have a regular board meeting Wednesday, December 13th, 2017, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular board meeting Wednesday, January 10th, 2017, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 8, reports and presentations. 8A, a school presentation from Robinwood Elementary with Mr. Chad Nelson. Hi, welcome.
Great, thank you. Am I able to project?
Yeah, sure. Nick, do you want to talk to me?
If you talk louder. And you can project.
First of all, thank you for letting me come and present some of the great things that are happening at Robinwood. I know last week, or last time, you had South of Glen here kind of explained the literacy implementation and units of study. And one of the questions that kind of comes up is, well, what do you do for spelling? So we wanted to spend a little time talking about that. Now, first thing I'd say is we don't call it spelling really anymore. If you think about spelling, what comes to your mind is probably when you were younger, and on Monday you got this list of words. Everyone got all the same list of words, regardless of where you were at as a learner, and you memorized the words so that you were really good at being able to spell those words at the end of the week, and then you spelled them and you got so many right. It's really called word work now because we don't memorize words as much anymore as we analyze phonemic sounds, and we analyze word patterns, and we analyze similarities and differences in words. And that's really what we do with Words Their Way. So why do we have Words Their Way? Again, like I said, Words Their Way is a way we look at spelling and phonics in a way of looking for what are the rules that we use in the English language, and what are those patterns, and what's the same and what's different. So we actually have the kids take the time to figure those things out, and then they take those spelling patterns and they use that in being able to, in their reading, find, oh, that's that pattern I just figured out, so they can figure out their phonemic awareness in their reading, and then they take those patterns again and it transfers into their writing. And I brought my wonderful fourth grade teachers tonight, but I want to take a little bit, because kindergarten just started their Words Their Way, and that builds those foundational skills there. So for instance, they started off even with just pictures, whale, pale. So they're looking at those rhyming and getting that phonemic awareness, and now they're looking at beginning sounds. So they'll do, and you'll see kind of some sorts later, where they have like the letter M, and they have to match up moon and pictures that start with the beginning sounds, build those foundational skills as well. And then you'll see kind of how that, there's a progression there that goes up into some of our upper grades. You'll get to experience a little bit of the hands-on investigation piece that leads to that engagement, that higher order thinking, and that's why things go back into your long-term memory. Versus, again, memorizing for Friday, now I dump it, it doesn't get into my writing. And then students are also engaged in work at their level, so it's not, again, not this one-size-fits-all. It's, we do a pre-assessment, and based on that, determine small groups based on your exact need, and not need in terms of words, but need in terms of like the phonics within words. So I'm going to introduce my team here. They're going to take over now and explain that actually, they're the feet on the ground in the classroom doing it, so they're going to give us a little taste of how we identify the groups, then what those groups really do. And then we'll show you a little video of some of our kids doing it. So I'm going to introduce all three of you, and then you can go. So I have Mrs. Kim Hyde. She's one of my fourth grade teachers, so she'll be starting off here in a minute. I have Mrs. Ann Elkhorn, a fourth grade teacher, and then Miss Tori Bailey, who is a student teacher for Mrs. Elkhorn and wanted to come and help out and present as well. So I welcome all three of them for coming. So Kim, if you want to jump in, and I'll kind of run the presentation while you go ahead and
So I'm
talk
not
about that.
actually giving you a spelling test, I'm giving you one of the tests my students took. I didn't pick a specific person, it was actually the first person in my class. So they take a 31, at the upper elementary, a 31 question spelling test, and it's given the way most of them are, where you say, the first word is switch, and then you give a sentence and you say the word again. And it's not like it's that complicated. The part that gets tricky or different is the way that you grade it, the way that you look at it. If you flip the page, on the second page, and this is what that's put up here, well, that's the primary one.
Yeah, I'll go to that.
This is actually her score. So if you look at her test, she spelled switch correctly. She had the SW, she had the I, and she had the TCH. So she got 3 points for that word and spelled it correctly. She didn't spell smudge correctly, but she knew the SM part and the U. She didn't know the DGE. But if I look down that list later on, you can see the complex consonants. She knew them. She knew the vowels, she knew the blends and digraphs. But when it got to the inflected endings and syllable junctures, she she missed 2. And so that's according to Works Their Way.
She must have been on the other side too, right?
Yeah, and that's where she falls into that group. That is her, where we start her out, and then it tells us she starts on sort, like 32 of this certain book. And then those are things she needs to work on. There is a back also to the assessment. And I just wanted to say some of the really neat things were, if you look at the back, she didn't spell a single one of those words correctly. But if you look in that affixes row, she knows them. She's a little bit of work. But in the olden days, when I would have graded a test, they would have just been wrong. I was been like, yep, doesn't know any of those words, 21 to 31. But now I can look at it and I can think, all right, well, this is exactly what she needs. She knew none of the Greek and Latin elements. She knew some of the prefixes. She knew how to put the double consonants about half the time. And it gives us a really good starting point. And before, it would have just been marked wrong, and we wouldn't have known. And everyone, of course, has their own test and their own assessment. And we ended up with, as you can see, there's a bunch of different starting points. I think there's 11 different places you could end up starting, but that would be like from kindergarten up all the way through. Nobody, I would hope, no one had 11 different places. That we worked, the 3 of us together, and I think we had 6 or 7 different starting places between, you know, the 2 combined classes, and the kids get to work in good groups. I don't know. I mean, it takes a while to grade it, but I think it was worth the time because it really gives me an idea of, really, you can, when you look at it like that, you can see where the gaps are. And some other kids have some, it's pretty blatant, and you're like, oh. And it's kind of really neat too when they miss one whole row, and then they keep getting them, and you think, if we just filled in that one little skill set, how far they would go. If anyone has any,
When do you provide this assessment? Is this start of the year?
we do the beginning of the year, January, and then in spring. But the neat thing too is that she's not stuck in that row, no one's stuck in that group. So they go through some, and Ann's gonna talk about that. They have assessments, and then you move up to the next levels anyway. So it's not like for the whole year she'd be working on that. As soon as those are mastered, they go on, and if they aren't mastered, they keep working on them. So
And the other assessments aren't as this detailed in
it's
terms
the
of
exact same one again.
all 3 that you mentioned, but the smaller individual assessments
No,
are.
the individual ones are not this detailed. It would only be on that particular skill set. So it might be, we just gave one and it was just on, like, just the double vowels
Mhm.
together, and that was, well, one of my groups just had that, and those were just those words.
But even though there's only 3 assessments, they're working on these words all year.
Right, because this isn't really, this is just a placement assessment. We replace in January, we replace, it'd be for the end of the year, and, you know, it'll just help us kind of at the end to show growth. But during the year, there's a lot, some people are already on their second one.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to address that a little bit better. What I did is I brought in the students that I'm working with. One of the groups is, they're on sort 36, and it's on the silent beginning consonants. So what I did is I put together the packet, and I'm going to give each one of you this particular one. When they started on 36, we'll work on sort 36, sort 37, sort 38, and then there is an assessment. And this is the assessment that I think you're questioning. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you the packet so you can see. This is, they would work on one sort for a week.
15
So-
minutes a day.
Right. And so,
It's 15 minutes a day, if you're wondering that they work on the word. 15 minutes.
So that's 3 weeks worth of work.
Yeah.
Is sort a group of words?
Yep, and yeah, and you'll see a sort in just a little bit. You want me to hand those out and stuff?
so what the students do is, when we, after we've given them the initial task in their, like, in their sort, the very first day, they're given this sheet of paper, and they're gonna cut the sort out, and they're gonna be, putting them in a category, and you're gonna be getting a little, we have And all the students have their own bag. And what I'd like you to do is go ahead and open up that sort. This is sort 36. You must know your beginning silent consonants to go with this sort. Inside the bag, you will notice on the words, there is guide words that are bolded. So you're going to find the KN, the silent K, what that means for, as in the word known, or knob, or kneel. So you're going to find the KN, the WR, and the GN. Those are the three that they're working on. So we find those and we set those at the top, and then you look for the bolded words, and they would be knife, right, and gnat. Then the students are to look through all of the other words and put them in the correct category. Now, you're going to find some oddball ones in there that don't fit any of the categories. And it's interesting because every now and then, because we're all working with different groups, you'll hear somebody go, I got an oddball one. And we hear, like, I'll be working in my little group, and I hear one of Tim's kids, hey, is this an oddball? And I know, whatever they're working on, they got one that's an outlier that doesn't fit any
Time's
of
up.
the groups.
I have an oddball.
You will like the space sort.
I am an oddball.
Now, after they've initially cut them out and sorted them, then they're gonna take their spelling or vocabulary notebook, and they're gonna write the list that you just put together. Now they write it in their list. So that's just one quick 15-minute activity. Then the next day, we have other activities, and Victoria's gonna explain those. Oh, wait just a minute before I do.
Are we done?
I want you to
No,
know.
this is not.
After they've done all the different activities, and it's time for, and it's time for the test, there's, the test looks like the last page in your packet. It's got, the words that I would call out would be from the last 3 weeks worth of sorts. So it's not just this sort, but it's the next 20 words and the next 20 words. And when I would say the word, I would then give them a sentence, and then they have to look and see which category it goes in. So they're not only getting a point for spelling the word correctly, but knowing which category it's in. And then if they don't pass this test, then they're lucky enough to get to do this all over again. They don't go on until they pass. And once they pass, then there's a whole new set of sorts that we start all over again. So when you were asking about are they stuck in that? No. This one, there was 3, and then the test. The next one after this, there's only 2 sorts, and then a test. So it's depending on what the lesson is to determine their assessment.
And this is where the teachers go on, and I talked about more that higher level thinking and more looking for those word patterns, and they'll ask, well, why did you do it this way? Why did you sort it that way? Why are you putting these together? So it's really highly engaging into the thought process of, again, the similarities and differences in our English language and why.
So now, since you've organized it in the very first day, the next couple days, there's other activities.
Yeah, so after the teacher has gone through the lesson explaining the sort, because we do discuss like the patterns or whatever the sort's focusing on with them, and they cut them out and they have them written down. Then throughout the week, we give the students different activities. Every group isn't always doing the same activity. We showed some examples. So super sentences. You take as many words as you can, and you write a sentence using the word. I have the higher groups of the class, so the ones that are in the higher sorts, I get to differentiate, and I say write paragraphs using this, or write a story using this. So you can actually differentiate between kind of the levels and the students that you have too. ABC, that is where you would take these words and you would alphabetize them all as best you could, and you look through, sometimes they're looking at even a third letter, because if you have multiple words that start with KN, then you're looking at the third letter for alphabetizing. Stair-step sort, or the stair-step sort, that is, for instance, if you had the word the, you would write, because we do have booklets that they'd open their booklets and start writing the words in stair steps, meaning that if you had the word the, you would more.
I've done this one. That once we got through all 3 of these, they keep their words, and then we mix all 3, like sort 36, 37, and 38. They all get mixed together, and then they have to try to sort or brand all of them. And the kids, they try to race each other. So that it's like a speed thing, and they really do enjoy it. But yeah, the speed sort.
Yeah. Word hunt is a fun one. They get to look at whatever book that they're currently reading, and they try to find whatever they are focusing on, so like a KN word in their own books that they're reading. It's a really good cross-category with reading, so it's not just, it's all of literacy. And the speed sort is a favorite. What you would do is you would undo your sort, set a timer, see how fast you can do it, see what time you got the first time, then undo it again, try to beat your first time. So that's a more quick, kind of ready thing, strategy. So they're doing it as quick as they can, how Kim was saying, how she was trying to sort it as fast as she could. That would be a speed
And I was
sort.
saying with the word hunt too, the neat thing is they're not looking for those particular words, they're looking for the rule.
Yeah.
One of my groups is working on the oi sound, so it's whether it's OI or OY, and they're so excited every time they find one of those words, but they're finally taking notice. Because there's a reason they're in that group, because up until this, they hadn't taken any notice of how to spell that sound.
Definitely, and I've actually had students where while they were writing their stories using these words, they were writing words that followed the rule but wasn't in their sort, and they're noticing that in their writing. So they're actually realizing where other words that use these patterns that aren't even in the sort.
Any questions? You can keep this. A bonus for tonight.
So, and of course, I know you want to see the kids playing with the swords and doing them, so we do have a short video for you to watch.
I just have
Let me
one
make sure I
question.
get my, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So
Miss
then,
Linda.
when did they learn how to use spell check?
Probably in kindergarten, just naturally at home when they're playing around, when they're Googling,
Oh,
so.
okay. Oh, so they don't you ever talk about spell
We
check?
do talk about spell check.
That's
It is-
part of-
It is
yeah.
part of the writing, but we also tell them how a lot of the words spell check doesn't catch because it's still another word.
Right, like if you spell rap and rap, if I spell rap, W-R-A-P, spell check isn't gonna
Context
catch it when
still
I'm looking for
important.
rap
And form and
music.
from are both words.
Right, so, right. But they know how to use spell, yeah.
What about all the inventive spelling that we see in text and all that? Is that going to go away now that we,
Oh, I think that will only grow, but
I'm sure, yeah.
they'll come up with more acronyms as we
okay.
continue. Any other questions? I'm sorry.
No, that'll be all, that's fine. I'll watch them.
We're doing the OI and OY, and we're on sort 31. And these are the oddball words. And for these words, if it's OI, then it goes in the OI column. And if it ends in OY or has an OY in it, then it goes in the OY.
When I said goodbye, it's true. I'm holding on to you like a star in the sky, floating up so high. I'm gonna fall for you.
So tell me about your word sort this week.
Our words this week are people who do things and words used to compare objects.
And what did you work on today, Lily?
We worked on writing a story with all of our words.
Can I hear a bit of it?
Without an evening sigh from me, I close my eyes to see when the fireflies light up the dark.
Soft C and hard C.
Okay, so what are you guys working on?
We're doing steps. We're going to do like one at a time. C, C-A, C-A-R, C-A-R-E.
Fall for you. Catch me when
These words in alphabetical order, and we're gonna see if and we made this little word count so letter count, and then so we can list them all in order and see.
When the spring light falls into winter night, hold on, our summer isn't gone. And to think I lied when I said goodbye, it's true. I'm holding on to you like a star in the sky, floating up so high. I'm gonna fall for you. Catch me when I do. Not a day drifts by without an evening sigh from me. I close my eyes to see when the fireflies light up the darkest night. I'll come and wake you with the sun like a star in the sky, floating up so high. I'm gonna fall for you. Catch me when I do, like a star in the sky, floating up so high. I'm gonna fall for you.
So, thank you. Oh, yes.
Is this standard across Wisconsin then, the way you're teaching spelling?
For the Words Their Way,
Yeah.
for school districts that have that program, is that what you mean?
It's not a state program.
It's not a state
Is
program.
that like Common Core standard?
Spelling is a Common Core
Yeah.
standard at multiple grade levels, but we've adopted these programs as part of our balanced literacy.
Oh, do they teach on college, Words Their Way?
I had a whole Words Their Way class.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it is the, like I said, it's the one that really promotes, that transfers to your reading and writing the most and really promotes that higher level thinking, that engagement at your level. And again, you come up with those patterns and rules that you're looking for versus trying to memorize just words. So it is the program that'll get our kids what they need to be able to do. But yeah, it's not a state mandated program.
But it's our program district-wide.
It's our
Do we have
program,
do we have
yeah.
K-5? Do we have alternative?
This, so this year we adopted it at Franklin. So, yeah.
Tim, what'd you ask?
Pretty new. How long has this program been in place? The answer was it started this year, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Did we have word lists before?
So before we had, we did have pockets of Words Their Way, we had pockets of sentence spelling, we had pockets of different things going on. So this is really where we said, okay, what will support units of study to the best of it? And Words Their Way is the one that would do that.
So let's say a student isn't
Sure.
progressing the way they should under Words Their Way. Do we have alternative programs that would support their growth, or are we fitting Words Their Way across?
So it's a progression. So I mean, if it's not working from here, you can work down in the progression, but it should be right where their need is.
Okay, but the program we'd view almost as comprehensive.
Yeah, it's Donald Bear's research of the last 15 years of phonemic awareness and word inventory and the rule work that the teachers and Mr. Nelson laid out. And if we see a bigger issue from that phonological standpoint and decoding and understanding, that's where the RTI process goes in, and we intensively intervene in a Tier 2 or Tier 3 service to fill that wide gap.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Is there another presentation?
All the lights?
I'm gonna have to.
I don't, Are you presenting?
Yes.
Okay. Item 8B then would be the new course approvals with,
Thank you.
thanks very much, with Mr. Volo, Mr. Cohen, and Mr. Reuter.
Good evening. It is hard to believe that we're already talking about new courses for next year, but it's that time of year. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Volo and then 3 instructors that I would ask to come up and join him as well. So Linda Kraus, Brian Debelak, and Seth Betcher. As they're getting situated, I did share with you the most up-to-date version of the course changes. We'll highlight them throughout the presentation. There were a couple minor changes that didn't make their way into the original document, and so you've got the updated document in front of you. So we wanted to start this evening by highlighting some of the courses that the board approved last year for implementation this year and let you know how they're going, and then get into our philosophy around the addition of new courses for this coming year, and then take you through those one at a time. So we wanted to start with our new business capstone course launch. Year-long course. It replaced entrepreneurship and is in place for the first time this year. It's a senior-only course. And we have one section of about 25 students right now at the high school. Andy Thompson, one of our business instructors, teaches that course alongside Diane Lettig. And just a couple things I want to highlight. That course was designed to really be a project-based, hands-on course that had a number of community-based components to it. And with that, we had solicited our community for mentors to come in. And every student in the class has a one-on-one mentor who is in the field and advising our student on their progress related to the projects that they're working on. But they also take students to a number of events in the community and get them out and kind of acclimate them to the world of business. We actually ended up with a mentor wait list. We have one mentor paired with every one of our students, and then still have additional mentors who want to participate in the program, and we simply don't have students for them at this point. So there was a great response from our community there. Additionally, the students in launch work on community-based projects. And so we've asked, particularly small business owners, if there are projects in the file cabinet behind you that you just don't have the capacity, time, or money to get to, that's something we want to take on for you and allow our students to have an authentic experience working on. And so there was an application process that we solicited community members for to say, if you'd like us to take on your project, go ahead and apply. And we actually got more community projects than we could take on in a year. And so the class kind of vetted those and took on the ones they could take on. And then we have a wait list for other community projects for potentially future years in terms of that. And they're doing a number of things, everything from web design to there's a local business owner who makes dog treats out of her home. And she sells them in a number of businesses in the community, but she doesn't have a packaging type that really is professional looking and that she was satisfied with. And so our students are working on packaging and redesign for her, along with some other advertising pieces that she had asked them for. So again, authentic experiences with a real world client that they're getting feedback on and supporting. Almost every student in this class also has either an internship, paid or unpaid, or a youth apprenticeship, which is a paid position through the Department of Workforce Development. So in addition to their mentor, they're also in a work-based position out in the community during release time during the school day and gaining valuable hands-on experience there. And then they come back into the classroom and get more of that theory and the application of that experience. And so it's a nice kind of well-rounded experience for our students. And I know that our mentors, we've gotten a ton of positive feedback from them, and our students are really enjoying the experience so far.
So the current enrollment is 25?
25, yep.
And what kinds of businesses are they interning at?
Yeah, everything from manufacturing to accounting to, and there's some students, I think, at Northwestern Mutual. We have students kind of in a variety of businesses. So if there's an aspect of business marketing, we have students there. With that, and you heard me reference it already, we did add accredited internships this year. In the past, we had a couple of internships at the high school, but we didn't have any community-based internships. This year, we have 24 students placed in community-based internships, both paid and unpaid, and we have 22 students that are staying at the high school but are engaged in credited internships at the high school. And so our students who are going out into the community, we have 3 primary career areas they're interning in: business, healthcare, and engineering. And then our students that are staying on site are interning in our autos program, our TV tech program, our constructions program, and then the new accelerator lab and they're providing services to other students and teachers throughout that experience. All of those students have to put in a certain number of hours to qualify for the internship and for the credit, and all of them will earn an employability skills certificate through the Department of Public Instruction. That involves a portfolio process that identifies a number of key employability skills that area businesses have identified or state of Wisconsin businesses have identified as being important to being successful in career. Students have to demonstrate mastery of those skills in order to receive that certificate. And so those students are getting those hands-on experiences throughout that.
And just to add that we have opened the door for additional departments and areas to explore what internships can look like in their specific areas. So you'll notice business and engineering, and some of the other ones that are traditionally on here have had internships. We're encouraging social studies, math, science, to think about what that could look like in our building, in our community, because that's part of, I think, every department's goals, have those same rich experiences and authentic experiences.
We think about the declining availability of teachers, right? You hear about teacher shortages across the state and what that's going to look like in the coming years. And as we talk tonight about child development, we have a number of students who on an annual basis volunteer in our elementary schools. That's another area we're targeting as an internship, right? Accredited internship for those students who are maybe thinking about going into education and have an opportunity to kind of build those skills in high school. So. And then the images you see here, the lower left, we have a number of students who are at Ascension Health on 27th in a number of nursing areas. A lot of our students who get their CNA certification over the summer end up going into youth apprenticeships or paid internships. And then the upper right, we have a student who's interning at for the Milwaukee Admirals. The third new course we added was part of a two-course program, the AP Capstone program. And the first course in that series was offered this year, AP Seminar. We currently have two sections of that course. It's housed in our English department right now. We have 41 students across those two sections. And there's a number of really exciting things happening in that course. It's really the first interdisciplinary AP course that College Board has offered. So students who are coming from a variety of interest areas or backgrounds are kind of bringing that learning together, and they're engaging in really good discourse and learning about what it takes to have research-based dialogue. I was able to visit that classroom over a couple days and saw some rich discussion where students were engaging in dialogue around a number of controversial topics, but they had well-researched those topics, and they were able to present those opinions in a research-based way and really defend those positions, at the same time learning skills like empathy and the ability to kind of approach a conversation willing to have your mind changed and listening to a well-reasoned argument and kind of change your perspective. And so it was really an interesting couple day experience in seeing that in action. Through this program, we've been able to forge a fairly robust partnership with UW-Milwaukee Honors College. They have a robust writing program there that's attached to their writing center. They've agreed not only to have our students out in December to see the Honors College and work with their professors, but they're going to be providing us a number of students in February and March who are going to act as mentors for our AP Seminar students and pair up on a one-to-one basis and mentor them around writing. And so as these students start to think about college-level writing, they're going to have some Honors College students who are advising them in that area. So it's going to be a rich partnership between the two of us. The second course in this series then we approved last year, but will be going into effect next school year, and that's AP Research. So students who took AP Seminar are now eligible for AP Research. If they complete both those courses, they can receive the AP Seminar Research Certificate through College Board. If they complete those courses and then pass 4 additional AP exams, they can get the AP Capstone Diploma. And so that's how that program will bear out for us.
And is that directly through UW-Milwaukee, or is that a separate, that's through the AP accreditation?
It's through AP, yeah, it's through College Board. The diploma will be through us, but the AP Seminar Certificate's through College Board.
So normally you'd take an AP course and then you'd have an AP test. Here there's 2 courses, but there's 4 exams?
So these courses each have an exam. It's fairly unique because these courses are focused primarily on writing, but also they have to do an oral defense as a part of it, and that oral defense has to be recorded, and then the teacher scores it and then submits the recording to College Board. These are the only AP courses, AP Research and AP Seminar, where the teachers are allowed to score the end-of-course exams. Typically, the end-of-course exams all go off to College Board, and then they bring in a number of teachers from around the country to score them. These are scored by by our teachers, and they had to go through a fairly rigorous training process this past summer and then again this spring in order to be able to do that. The additional 4 exams would be for 4 other AP courses. So if I took both of these and then I took 4 other AP courses, I'd have to pass those exams for those courses as well as AP Seminar and AP Research.
To get the diploma?
Yes, correct.
What are those other 4 classes, if I can ask?
It can be any AP
Oh, anything.
courses they
Okay.
want.
All right.
Yep.
And that brings us to this year and our guiding questions that looked at new courses and proposals. So the first question up there, does it fill a need, right? And that really kind of drives the other ones, right? The intentionality around what we're trying to propose. So those needs can be gaps in our curriculum, right? Rigor that we're not currently having students reach. And also tying into the career pathway and a vision for our focus or an area of emphasis for our district. To that end, what those can tie into are items like capstone experiences, can tie into additional coursework, and just again, our immediate need for students that's not currently being met. So each one of the courses that you see presented tonight hits at least one of these questions or areas and answers it affirmatively, if not multiple. I believe last year, or previously, you did get some information about what a capstone experience is. And every content area can think about what a capstone experience in their area is. The ones that really jump out to me are sort of the community-based, the experiential part of this, the second to last bullet, involving community members as mentors, right? That authentic experience of placement, have an audience beyond just your immediate classroom that's really driven by you, the student, not the teacher's sort of curriculum that they create. And as we think about the capstones, even some of which will be presented tonight by us, these are things that we want to create in additional course areas and content areas. So again, the merits of this, I think, we believe in. So as you hear us talk tonight, again, think about these courses and think about how they are, again, hitting multiple areas here. And they're meeting needs our kids have to be ready for what they're going to do next.
I'm looking at this, looking at this in totality, how do we ensure that we don't oversaturate a course book?
So most, if not every course, with one exception tonight, when we add, we also retract or delete or contract course offerings. And that's, I think, to meet that very need. So we're not oversaturating or spreading our same student population on too many opportunities where we can't actually support and run them.
On the previous page, one of the 4 questions, or of the 4 questions, where do we really see anticipated course attendance, interest for those courses? How do we value that?
So based on getting the student input or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can identify an urgent need if we have deficiency in math, for example, or science. But how do we gauge truly from the user standpoint, the student, of saying they're actually going to take this course?
There's really a couple different answers to that question. One, we'll typically survey the student body if we're interested in what kind of feedback we're getting. Like if we're considering, for example, a number of new English electives, we'll survey the student body with a list and say, what are you interested in? Or we'll give them some chance to provide feedback. Students ultimately vote with their feet, right? And in terms of if they sign up for a course, the course is going to run. And so we try our best to not oversaturate by contracting. But if we get into a circumstance where a course isn't getting the numbers that it should to run, then we'll typically run it every other year, or we won't run it, or it will come before the board and we'll remove it. Within that, also, we take a look at, frequently engaging with our school counselors, the academic and career plans, right, that students have. So we'll look at what are the career pathways our students have identified, and are we offering a robust number of courses in that career pathway so that we're adequately providing opportunities for students to grow.
What if a student is pushing for, and we don't have, I guess, a broader request for a type of course, but let's say there's a need or an interest in a certain area, other than saying, take a study hall and see how we can figure out what can work within that time frame. What do we do?
I know that one of the things that I think I believe that we want to try to do more of is be providers of experiences when we have the ability to. That being said, we can't often create those one-off things. So I think that we try to find innovative solutions, not just have a study hall and we'll find someone who can do the course for you that's not us. But as we have those things, how can we, with our own educational professionals, do those things?
I'm assuming that comes up a handful
Yeah.
of times every year, right?
Got a lot of options, right? Between the state providing opportunities for youth and course options, we also have our online catalog that we can provide to students. We've also built a pretty strong relationship with MATC, as you're going to see tonight, and so they've been great about customizing experiences for our students if we need to provide them. So we've got some both in-house and external venues for some of that to be creative with kids.
And isn't that the purpose of the capstone project, is you can,
I would say, yeah. I mean, like we want to create experiences that kids don't leave to get, or that kids will choose to do in spite of the fact they could have a free block or some other thing in their schedule that, quite frankly, they don't need to take 32 credits, over the course of their career. They choose not to oftentimes, right? That's well learned, that's great. But if we create experiences they want to be in, right, that's better for them, right? And I'd rather they're enrolled in 8 credits, for 4 years than, my senior year I get to leave at, noon and, not engage in something. If we have something that draws them in, they can vote with their feet. I think that's really the goal. Which segues into some partnerships that we have the ability to take part of, as do other schools in Southeast Wisconsin through MATC. So what these partnerships represent is course pathways in high-demand fields here in Southeast Wisconsin that can lead directly into not just training and certificate and a technical or other certificated, proficiency and competency, but is done so in a way that outpaces what we're able to offer within our own building. So kind of going from left to right, one of the opportunities here is in welding, and while we do have a welding course, right, this welding pathway goes far beyond what our course is able to do at present, right? In the middle, our computer networking administration is another opportunity where there's several certifications students can earn through that program. But again, while we do have some computer programming and some basic courses in that, this goes beyond, again, what we're able to offer right now. And then lastly, practical nursing is a more robust pathway that goes to almost any RN or LPN program, that really gets them, as it says up there, 3 fall nursing courses away from completing that LPN pathway. So what these represent, we'd have the opportunity to send, about 1 to 3, I think, students from our district into these different pathways, because again, MATC is drawing from the entire area and the entire region into these areas. And again, this puts them not just in pathways that are great per MATC, but they're also tied to direct employment needs in Southeast Wisconsin that are also beginning pathways, right? These aren't necessarily endpoints, but they're beginning points for students to get trained, get work experience, and then possibly get, increasingly trained as they go on.
The landscape of dual credit is really changing. The kind of the old model of transcripted credit, where I had a course that was offered on site by us that would articulate to MATC, for example, the Higher Learning Commission a couple years ago came in and did an audit of the state of Wisconsin, and was concerned that a number of the teachers in local high schools who were teaching those transcripted credit courses did not meet the credentialing guidelines of the university through the Higher Learning Commission. In other words, they didn't have a master's degree, many of them, a master's degree in the course they were teaching. They had a master's degree in some other subject or in education. And so as a result of that, the Higher Learning Commission said, all right, you have a year, we want you to get all the teachers at the high school level up to certification, or you can't offer those courses anymore. While most of the local schools, the universities in 2 years, filed an extension with the Higher Learning Commission, and they got a 5-year extension. That said, at the end of that 5 years, high school teachers will still need to meet that level of credentialing to offer transcripted credit courses. And schools like MATC, Milwaukee, Whitewater realize that that's not realistic. And so as a result, they're trying to shift the way that they offer transcripted credit. This Pathway Academy model that you're seeing is really the new form of transcripted credit. The idea is that students take a pathway through us, like our biomedical science program, take those 4 courses through 4 years, max out our curriculum, and then in senior year have this opportunity to get a jump start on post-secondary. And the cost to the district is the same as it would be if they took youth options courses. And so it allows for a more focused youth options or course options experience for a student after they've maxed out our pathway, our curriculum. and it doesn't force us to create an LPN program, which frankly isn't realistic for us, right? And so there's a lot of benefit not only to the students, but also to us and to MATC. The other benefit is these students are all earning professional certifications. Through the state of Wisconsin, there's something called the Career and Technical Education Incentive Grant that provides money to the district up to $1,000 per student per professional certification they earn per year. And so there's incentive for the districts to continue to allow students to earn these professional certifications that they then can put on their resume and take with them wherever they're going. All the students who would complete these programs would meet that eligibility and earn that certification if they complete the pathway, which means there's a financial incentive back to us in terms of sending students into those programs. That said, it's not a huge number of students, right? They're drawing from all of Southeast Wisconsin, so they're looking for 1 to 3 students per district. And so we're looking for some specialized students here that frankly have really academically shown aptitude to kind of drive through our curriculum and are looking for a different type of experience senior year. These students are committing to not being on our campus for more than a course a day, and so they're frankly giving up some of their senior experience to go do this. And so it kind of takes a special kind of student to engage with this level of learning. But it's something we're pretty excited about.
Mr. Cohen, what is the difference between dual enrollment academy and the early college credit program that goes into effect next year?
A dual enrollment or dual credit academy is MATC's terminology. It's something they created. The early college credit program was part of that youth options change that's going into effect next year, that statutory change. Under that, it's essentially, there's a lot of things that are similar about it. They're still allowed to take up to 18 credits over their high school career that the district has to pay for, including books. It can be at any 4-year post-secondary institution. But they can take those courses anywhere from grades 9 through 12, where in the past youth options used to be just grades 11 and 12. Technically in the statute, youth options still exists, but only for the technical colleges, not for the 4-year colleges. So you have now, they're reinstating part-time open enrollment. You're going to have the early college credit program, which is for 4 years, and you're going to have the youth options program, which is for 2 years. And we'll come back as DPI starts to refine that with more information for all of you. Frankly, we're still trying to wrap our heads around it. DPI is still talking to their attorneys about what that's going to look like. So as we have more information, we'll bring it to you. But that's how it's designed right now. It's 3 separate programs. This is MATC essentially saying, look, you know, if your students haven't taken advantage of that and they're seniors, let's do all 18 credits at one time rather than spread that out over 4 years, and it's the same cost to the district. And it's something that's more valuable. Students aren't taking these one-off random courses at a post-secondary institution. They're taking a very focused pathway that's frankly going to benefit them more.
So I think this is fantastic, but obviously we're limiting district coverage up to 18 credits. Is that what would have normally been covered under a youth option?
Yes, that's the amount we would cover under youth options, which is why we decided to set it there. And then the parent is responsible for the remainder. For practical nursing, for example, it's 20 credits. We're paying for 18, so the parent is paying 2 credits for the student to go through that program, which is $300.
Why not pick up the additional credit coverage?
Again, I think we're trying to look at equity and rising tuition costs. We don't know what that's going to, you know, kind of move to in future years, and I think we're on the hook for the 18 credits. We felt like that was a reasonable place to start. Additionally, we'll have other students still taking advantage of youth options or their early college credit program, and so we don't want to pay for their 18 credits but then pay for more student credit here. We wanted to have equity across those
I
programs.
think there's value in having them have some skin in the game also.
Yep.
They will value it more if they have money in the game.
That said, if there's a family with financial hardship, obviously we would talk about that. Right?
So you said you're just looking for like a few key people that would fit this criteria because it's going to take a specialized student to do that. So what would someone's schedule look like if they wanted to go into the welding? And you said 1 course or 1 class a day at the high school?
Yeah.
Or maybe not even that?
So
or?
students in computer networking, administration, and practical nursing would have their first 3 blocks off-site at MATC South in Oak Creek, and then they would come back for 4th block for us. The student in the welding program, that's a little more intense. There are certain days where that program runs all day, and there are certain days where it only runs till noon. So in that case, on certain days, the student would come back for 1 class. Presumably, all of these students could also be in a youth apprenticeship or an internship at the same time, so they could go to a practical nursing program at MATC and then go to a CNA youth apprenticeship for 4th block and never set foot on our campus again.
Because one of the things that I was thinking about when I first saw this is they're going to have their high school requirements for graduation in potentially before their senior year if they're going to be off-site doing most of this other stuff. the
Yep.
English, the FIAD, all those other requirements that we require for graduation.
Yeah, so if you look at the course list for any given program, in most of them, you're going to see an English course built in so that they're getting that English course requirement met at METC their senior year. Outside of that, they could presumably have FIAD done by their junior year, right? That requirement, they have to have health in, so we have to make sure they get that their junior year, or that they were taking health online or some other option. But you're right, they would have to meet our graduation requirements, which is again why this is a fairly robust path, right? And it's going to take a certain kind of student to get here.
So these are the things that are discussed, like in 8th grade, 9th grade, or probably before 9th grade, to set their schedule up appropriately if they think this is something they want to do.
We'll, assuming these things are approved, we're gonna plan on sharing this at Pathways to Your Future Night with the 8th grade and 9th grade families that are coming to that event on Monday, so that they can start to prepare for those things long-term. And METC may offer different pathways than this in the future. It's driven by their capacity, but also regional need. So as regional employment needs change, they might offer different pathways.
But really, is it pretty much open to, you wouldn't have to decide this like in your sophomore year or junior year. You can just, time to sign up for senior year, I could easily just sign on to one of these?
Assuming that you've had your graduation requirements pretty much met, like the required courses you're not getting through the program. Also, because there's such a small number, there's going to have to be some selection criteria, right? And it's primarily going to be driven by students who it fits their academic and career plan, and they've taken a course series with us that speaks to their desire to do this more, right? So if they've taken our full biomed program, they're going to kind of move up on the wait list, as opposed to the student who's never taken a biomed course with us and then senior year says they want to go into nursing. So there is some element of planning ahead of time. Yes, certainly in theory, a student could jump into senior year and just jump into one of these. But I think there's an element of planning there that students will need to engage in to take advantage.
How do we have this conversation? I mean, to be frank, how the hell is an 8th grader going to know whether or not they're going to want to be a welder versus a nurse? So, I get we've talked about in the past, 8th grade, having those discussions. And I think the one video we showed was about a kid that wanted to be a taxidermist.
Yeah.
But again, how the hell is an 8th grader going to know?
We have so many opportunities for kids, right? And throughout their high school career, these students can participate in capstone experiences that are community-based. They can participate in internships. They can participate in youth apprenticeships. I mean, there's all kinds of options that allow a student who's making a late choice, or maybe just wants to experience something, to still have a full breadth of high school experiences that are really valuable to them. This is a specialized opportunity for a student who maybe does know earlier on than a typical student, and is kind of really pushed through that focused direction to take advantage of an opportunity that's available to them. But that doesn't mean there's opportunities closed off to everybody else. We have robust opportunities everywhere else in all of our other pathways for students. That's part of the reason we're trying to build in these capstone experiences.
Does this force the district to be a bit more flexible when it comes to summer programming, alternative programming? Let's say I'm a sophomore and I had a life-changing event or something, and all of a sudden I realize, hell, I want to be a practical nurse.
Yeah.
I want to be a nurse, and I want to get into this program. What is the district able to do in order to fit someone in that situation? Are we able to provide courses over the summer that someone might need to be ready by junior year to be fit enough academically to be able to take one of these programs?
Certainly we have a lot of venues for flexibility, from our online options to potentially summer to, students doubling up on courses in the course of their year. So we have a lot of flexibility and a lot of options, and we try to be as flexible as possible. Mr. Bolo and I are having conversations all the time about individual student need and how we might address those needs moving forward. Summer school in particular, we've stayed away from credit granting courses that weren't remedial and/or a student through a credit recovery process, because students are able to earn 32 credits through high school now. They only need 28 to graduate. If students are suddenly taking 3-4 credits in the summer now, they're starting to meet those graduation requirements by the end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year, which is potentially problematic for us. So we've kind of stayed away from that, but on a case-by-case basis, we're always having conversations about how we can flexibly meet kids' needs.
I mean, in theory, any student could graduate from Franklin High School and get in any of these programs right out of.
Correct.
With any kind of, just with a diploma. There wouldn't be prerequisites to get into these programs straight out of Franklin High School. You could, so, if you can meet there's probably some English requirement, but other than that, you can probably, and there's nothing to say that someone who wants to be an engineer can't start out as a welder. I mean, these are just job opportunities. I don't see it.
And I was going to jump off that a little bit and speak to your point, Jeff. I think the academic career planning, looking at that as something that happens not just 9-12, but K-12. And knowing that sometimes you figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and sometimes you figure out what you don't want to be. Right? I mean, like, I remember hearing a parent once say to me, I know what my son's going to be, and I want to know that he's going to be able to take this class his junior year. And I was like, you know what your son's going to be, and he was a middle schooler, right? And she knew that. I don't think he knew that, right? And now that he's out of high school, I always want to visit back and say, is he doing what you thought he was going to do when he was 13? And I think that some of the things we talk about, acceleration, and the chance to sort of move quicker through things. I mean, we're talking about a lot of coursework and stuff like that today, but, I think there's bigger conversations we need to have about, like, does it take every kid 36 weeks to do biology? Right? I mean, it does because our calendar says it does. Right? So I think there's a lot of things that go into that outside of just summer as well in terms of how we run our courses.
I know we have to move on, but Mr. Milzer, I have to ask this question. How do we budget for this? Isn't this on top of the per student revenue limit? Or it's on top of it, correct?
Right, we don't receive any direct funding for any of this, so this is all new, and every time it's altered or augmented, it's additional money coming off the top, which maybe used to go to generally all programs that has to be focused towards this.
So how do we anticipate?
In the past, it hasn't been too different each year. Right now, I think we're going to see big differences for a while. There's a new program, which will be some new interest, maybe some kids looking at it that weren't before, and then at some point it'll probably stabilize again, but I think it'll stabilize at a higher level than we've been used to.
It will increase every year, though, don't you think?
The amount of students? Again, there's a certain capacity limit at MATC, right? Like, they only have a certain amount of rooms they can dedicate, a certain amount of staff they can dedicate. So as much as districts might want to grow and say, hey, we've got 15 LPN students who are interested, MATC is going to push back and say, we only have so much space at MATC South. So their own kind of staffing requirements and their own space requirements are kind of, for now, for the foreseeable future, keeping the numbers kind of down. And it also depends how many districts send students and how many students they're sending, because they're kind of limited in what they can provide.
So I know we're kind of just feeling our way through this, and it's an ever-changing world, and we're hearing about job shortages in different industries, but do we ever take a step back and realize that we're a high school, not a college? And that, I know there's a lot of good crossover here, but do you guys have the discussions? Are we trying to do too much sometimes?
Yeah, so we try to look at it in terms of what is the state saying we can and should be doing versus what are we capable of doing. And I'll speak to kind of the early college credit program again and youth options, right? The state has said students can take up to 18 credits, and as long as those credits go towards a degree program at that degree granting institution, school districts have to approve it and foot the bill. So as we think about that, and we see these, you've seen the requests come in over the years, right? There's a lot of kind of one-off courses and things that maybe don't seem like they're pathway driven or that they're focused on an academic and career planning, area for a student. They just want a post-secondary experience because they've exhausted our curriculum. This just helps us focus that in a way that we think is more meaningful for kids. So to me, whether we do this or not, those programs are still going to be there, right? We're still going to be coming to you annually. We're still going to have these requests for credits. Let's get kids in a career pathway then that they're interested in and focus them on something that's productive rather than us having to do these one-off courses all the time and still foot the bill for it. So I think as long as the state is saying at the high school level, you need to be offering opportunities for students to earn college credit in high school, then it's our obligation to meet those needs in the best way we think we can do that,
So that's part of the reason for capping it at the youth options credits? Okay.
As far as the number of kids we're going to have take these classes, you're putting that limit more on being dictated by the MATC and how many they will accept, rather than we're going to put 3 in each or
we'll see.
offer 3 in each.
We haven't advertised these to our students yet, obviously, right? So who knows, right? I suspect the nursing strand is going to be pretty popular. We have a robust biomed program. I suspect we may have a number of students on a wait list for that pathway, for example. Welding, we currently have 1 welding course. So I don't know, kind of flowing through here, what's going to be popular, what's not. The students are going to have to decide. Additionally, again, it comes down to, I'm giving up my senior year at Franklin High School, presumably, right, for all intents and purposes. I can still participate in activities, but I'm going to be off campus for 3 blocks a day. And so how do I feel about that? Am I willing to commit to that, that level of kind of post-secondary effort? Or do I want to wait, have my high school experience, and then go on to college? We just don't know. And I think we'll find out, when we advertise and when students start to ask about it.
So this will probably drive a lot of business for the guidance counselors on how students could make their curriculum during the first couple of years of high school enable doing this.
Yeah, and again, to Mr. Volo's point, our hope is that we build really dynamic courses at the high school that kids want to take, and they want to participate in those courses and be on campus with us. But again, we felt like this was an opportunity to meet a need that frankly we're obligated to meet anyway, and thought this was a good way of doing it.
So did MATC come to us, or did we go to them?
It was really a joint effort. We started talking to MATC as a singular district about 1.5 years ago. We've built a pretty strong relationship with them, and we've started talking about these concepts of pathways and what was happening with transcripted credit, because I wanted to get out in front of that. I didn't want to be reacting to what the Higher Learning Commission was telling us. I wanted us to have a plan. And so we started those conversations, but then this past May or April, they came to all of the regional superintendents and said, hey, we've got an idea. Let's all get in a room and let's have a conversation. And so they invited us all over to South Campus and kind of kicked off this idea. And they actually, at that time, offered 7 different pathways, but it was in April, and most of the districts had already scheduled their students for the following year, and it just wasn't working out from a timing standpoint and from a funding standpoint. So then they went back this summer, kind of reworked it, and then came back to us all and said, here's what we're thinking.
So for our staff that is here, there's quite a shortage of welders right now, correct?
Absolutely.
So is guidance
Well,
obviously informing students that that's a good path to go to?
It is. Again, it's networking and it's talking. We've been in transition with the welding program. The current teacher there is doing a fantastic job. So that program, I feel, or I see that the kids are, it's going to grow. But we have to get to the potential so we can get to the MATC and then at level 3, because we currently have just one.
The additional MATC partnership that we have is our nursing assistant course. Right, so this is a course that prepares students to take the National Nurses Aid Assessment, and we currently have 32 students enrolled in this course, 16 each semester. So this is also eligible for that incentive grant, and because of the costs per credit, the grant, it does bring back money to us again. So we look at this idea. Again, these are students who notice grades 11 and 12. You think about that nursing pathway, they could be students who, if they're grade 11 doing that, would be interested in that next year. Right?
Does we currently have?
So we had for years been offering through our regional consortium a summer CNA, and that CNA course was taught by an outside for-profit agency that we paid as a consortium to come in and train on that certification. Well, to Mr. Lewis's point from earlier this evening, this is one of those areas where our demand was far exceeding what we were providing, and we started to see a number of course options requests for students to take CNA. So it was something we approached MATC about in terms of expanding that from summer to offering it during the school year. So it's a course we were offering and granting credit for already, but something that we felt like during the school year would provide us a better opportunity to service more students. And so this current year, we expanded from just the summer offering to a kind of a pilot in terms of fall and spring. We currently have 16 students in this fall semester, and we have 16 signed up for spring. The cost of this, because it's only 3 credits, actually is typically lower than the amount we're getting back from the CTE incentive grant. And so it's to this point been a self-sustaining program for us in terms of cost. It's been revenue neutral.
And where's the field experience then when they do it? The MATC takes care of that?
MATC takes care of everything. They go to the South Campus for that, and then they have clinicals. So our students will have clinicals 3 weekends in January, but MATC sets up those clinical experiences.
So this is taught, they go to MATC for this?
They go to MATC. Yep. So
Currently.
this is 1 block a day. They leave, well, it's 2 blocks, but they leave typically in the morning. They go there first thing, and then they come back to us for the rest of the day.
Right.
16 semesters max.
So there has to be cohorts of 8. And so we opened it up to everybody. We took everyone who signed up to cohorts of 8. So we got to 35, and then we ended up with a wait list because we had to form groups of 8. So, And then we still have the summer opportunity, so students who miss the fall or spring can still take it in summer and vice versa. And this certification is a requirement for the LPN pathway. So for students to be able to take that pathway their senior year, they have to have their CNA. So outside of those partnerships, we have a number of in-house courses that we're proposing to add or modify. Most of the changes have been in our FACE department, and Linda Krause is here this evening. She's one of our FACE teachers. And so I'm going to walk you through just these courses quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Linda to see if she has anything to add in terms of these courses. Our philosophy here was really back to that idea of a capstone, right? We built this capstone experience in business. FACE was the next logical department for us to build a capstone experience or set of experiences. There are really 3 pathways right now in our FACE program. There's a culinary arts pathway, there's a design pathway or fashion interior design pathway, and a child development pathway. And so we had to think about this in terms of, do we build one capstone experience that kind of encompasses all of that, or is that too big and we need to set some kind of different pathway capstone experiences? And we decided to go with the latter and separate those out and provide a capstone experience in each area. And so what you're going to see here, I'm going to skip the first course for just a minute. You see a culinary arts capstone, which we currently offer ProStart, but it's a semester long. It's called ProStart, and to be completely honest, students don't know what that means. And so there's been some challenges there in terms of getting students to sign up for the course, which is a phenomenal course, right? They bring in a number of outside chefs. The students are trained. There's the potential to compete. It's great. And the students who are in the program do phenomenally. But the word just hasn't gotten out because there was some limitation there, I think, just from a logistical and title marketing standpoint. That said, the condensed nature of a semester course was also pretty challenging because for students in a capstone to bring in the components of mentorship, the components of project-based experience that we know are really important to senior year or to a capstone, we couldn't do that in a semester. And so we extended it. We're proposing we extend it to a year. So that's where this course came from. Again, it's just a retitle and extension of an existing course, which is ProStart. The second capstone course was in our design pathway called Inspired Design, and that course is really a combination of architecture, fashion, sewing, design, and interior design. And it tries to meet those needs for students. Again, elements of project-based and mentorship and those things that are important to a capstone experience. It's for those students who are driven by that pathway and that experience. And we've also provided opportunities there for students who are in architecture to potentially jump into this course and have a capstone experience here as well. And then the third one,
Just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
But is fashion design and architecture, is that all happening in this design, or is it strictly architecture? I have a hard time combining fashion design,
Interior design.
architecture.
Interior design.
Interior design. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, interior design, not architectural design. Okay.
Well, architecture, a student with an architecture background certainly has a lot to lend to interior design, right, in terms of that design process. And then the third course we're calling REACH, which is our child development capstone. We've been able to do some really exciting things. Linda's done a phenomenal job of kind of thinking creatively about our current child development offerings. Our child development courses right now are really popular and they're great courses. This is the group that we run the daycare every year out of the high school. There's been some just great experiences for our students. Our students have gone to a number of elementaries and gotten experiences there. It's been great. But there was an opportunity here for us to kind of redesign them a little bit and think about it as a true capstone and also take advantage of our biomed program. We have such a robust biomedical science program, and if we think about the area of child development, the two big needs really are education, right? And we know, again, there's going to be a teacher shortage, and also healthcare. MATC actually told us a couple weeks ago when we met with them, they're predicting a 43% job vacancy rate for nursing by 2025. So there's a number of nursing, kind of areas of nursing that are going to be hard to fill jobs. And with that, we know things like pediatricians, child psychologists. There's a number of kind of other peripheral healthcare related areas, particularly on the mental health side, that are going to be really important and areas that we need to fill over time. And so this is an opportunity for us to kind of tap into that. And again, thinking creatively, we looked at the Child Development 2 course and created another course that was an offshoot of that called Child Development in Healthcare. So whereas one of the child development courses is going to continue to focus on that education pathway, this one is designed to focus on that healthcare component and the career fields that are associated with that. And then the capstone experience will kind of take both and bring all those experiences together with students who are both going through either an education pathway or a child health pathway, and allow them to interact with each other in really interesting and dynamic ways. On the right-hand side, you're going to see some of the changes and or contraction that's occurring. I would pose that these courses really aren't being eliminated. The curriculum for these courses is being reintegrated into the courses that we're proposing to add or extend. And so, you know, again, Mr. Lewis, back to your earlier point, whenever we add, we contract, so the contractions on the right-hand side are occurring so that we can extend and run these courses on the left. Mr. Volo and Ms. Kraus, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add or talk about related to those courses.
I don't know if anybody has any questions, like what the difference is or what we're going to do. In the child development and healthcare, you know, how is that different than the child development 2 course that we currently are teaching? And like Mr. Cohn said, the current child development 2 course, that's where we run the Sabre Preschool. It's very education focused, but there's so much more to child development than just education. So just, you know, looking at, you know, social work or the different healthcare fields, OT, PT, you know, looking at maybe a place like Penfield Children's Center where they have, you know, they work with typically developing kids, but they also work with kids that have special needs. And there's just such a need out there. And so many kids, I think, you know, they want to go into pediatrics, pediatric nursing, something like that, but they've never had a child development class. And so, and I through email, discussed this with the 2 district nurses who have both had lots of experience at Children's Hospital. They think it sounds like a fantastic idea because working with families, supporting families, you know, the mental health, the milestones, you know, helping families to understand what their child might need, supporting families, you know, all of those kinds of things that are really, really important in healthcare. And, you know, how is this different than perhaps the biomed? And one of my daughters is in healthcare. And when I look at her, when she talks and, you know, when she gets into her clinical mode, I mean, it's just very different. But yet I know she loves to work with the young patients. And so, you know, I give the example like when they have to put a little kid into like a straitjacket. Okay, they don't say, we're going to put you in a straitjacket, you know, we're going to wrap you up like a burrito, or we're going to put on your superpower suit, you know, because you've got to put the hands. I mean, it's just like, how do you talk to the kids like that? How do you talk to the parents? And so it's a whole different way of dealing with child development. Still looking at the milestones, you know, all of the things that are important for their health care. And then because in the Child Development 3 course, starting last year, we really developed some good relationships with Pleasant View and Southwood Glen, having the students go over there. And so in that capstone class, really expanding that to maybe more of the grade schools or the child care centers or Penfield Children's Center, lots and lots of mentors coming in, helping, and students going out. Because, you know, what is it like to be an OT? What is it like to be a PT working with kids? And you know, maybe this is the time that they find out that they really, really love kids, or maybe it's a time to find out that, oh, maybe they don't want to work with kids, and that's equally as valuable. And last week was the first, no, 2 weeks ago, we went to Pleasant View with my Child Development 3 class. I never use my camera on my phone because I never have my phone up. But if I could have taken a picture of all of those kids on the bus on the way back, because they did not want to leave Pleasant View. They were working with the kindergartners, they were working with the second graders on literacy. They were all just smiles. They were like, can we come back tomorrow? That's what, you know, that's what we want to instill in kids early on. You know, high school is where they tend to make a lot of their decisions. If we can get kids excited about working in education, then I think it's great.
Is there a daycare certification that's part of any of these tracks here?
Yes. Okay, so with, with the current Child Development 1 and Child Development 2, they have their opportunity to get their Assistant Child Care Teacher certification, the ACCT. And that will still continue. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to take a look at all of the requirements in the ACCT to see if somehow we'd be able to do that with the healthcare track. And then definitely expanding more with the childcare teacher certification, because they need to have a lot of hours in a licensed childcare center. But now that the course is expanding to a full year class, the potential for that is a lot stronger, that they would be able to do that. So they, a lot of students get the assistant childcare teacher certification, and then some of them also get their childcare teacher certification, so they could leave high school and be the lead teacher in a licensed childcare center. And that's a benefit for the kids when, you know, even if that's not going to be their life goal, when they're in college. You know, I've had UWM contact me, you know, can you give me a recommendation for this student? This student, they've applied to work at, you know, our child care center at UWM, and also Whitewater has contacted me, you know, they've got their ACCT, they find out, do they have their sudden infant death syndrome training? Do they have their, what used to be called shaken baby syndrome, which is now abusive head trauma? Do they have that? And they get those. So that really puts the kids above the other students that might be competing for those positions.
Is that going to be, when you have a course description, is that mentioned in there, that they, or did they get that on their own?
So in the course description for the Child Development 2 class, currently the education focus, that's in there. And it should be also probably in the Child Development capstone class, that they'd have the opportunity. And like I said, I have to take a look at the curriculum for the child development and healthcare, and what the state says we have to do for the assistant child care teacher certification. If those align, then they could also get their assistant child care teacher certification. As
we think about our course guide and all these expanding certifications, we're continuing to have conversations about how we structure the course guidebook to make sure that all of those things are highlighted easily for students, right? Like, I shouldn't even have to hunt through a course description to find that, right? At the end of the day, if it awards a professional certification, we should put that out in front and right next to the course name. So we're continuing to work on that.
All right, with business, not a ton of dramatic changes. There is one new course, but that new course is actually a combination of 2 existing courses that ran every other year. And we had an advertising and print media course, and we had a web design course. So we're going to have advertising and web design, which combines the best of both curriculum that, quite frankly, they both, you know, in some ways, you know, were kind of thin and also overlapped quite a bit, you know, with each other. So there's some efficiency with that. So the new course, again, replaces those 2 courses. The other changes for business are title changes, which don't change the courses themselves, just change what we call them in the guidebook. So organizational leadership would become business management. Launch, which is the capstone, and again had that very wordy description that was approved last year, is going to be just launch, the business capstone. And then business communications technology is going to be business communication. So nothing quite as dramatic in business. The title changes again align with what they believe its courses are, and I think what advertises them better. And again, the consolidation of 2 existing courses into 1 half-credit course. And for Tech Ed, and I'll turn it over to Seth and Brian in a bit, but we're going to have a course that's Technical Innovations 1 and 2, which is the course title that we arrived at. And then the course changes would be the elimination of Survey of Tech, which was, I think, a sampling of kind of all the different potential areas within the Career and Tech Ed department. And Intro to Welding will be changed to Intro to Manufacturing and Welding. And what that represents, I think, as well as an investment in our lab space. So we talk about lathes as well as welding and different things that way. So it introduces students to both machining and welding, and lets students know that they're not just going to weld, you know, for 18 weeks. They'll be exposed to multiple machines and machining processes in that lab, which then can hopefully branch into growing pathways, you know, hopefully additional welding courses, and other things that involve that metals lab that we've invested quite a bit in this past year. So in terms of the Tech Innovations class, gentlemen, Seth and Brian, Mr. Devil and Mr. Betcher, you guys want to tell us a little bit about Tech Innovations?
The Tech Innovation 1 and 2 is, of course, based off the Accelerator Lab that we're currently in the process of generating curriculum, and with 3D printers and working through it. Just to give you some background knowledge, we have roughly 8 interns, 2 of them construction, 6 of them from different areas within the engineering department. The kids are actually creating tutorials, videos, doing different aspects for the whole school. The key word that we keep on saying is capstone, 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 capstone. And that's what we're trying to go to. Well, we need an area for these kids to develop and do the prototyping. So in essence, the Accelerator Lab is that area. The Technical Innovation 1 course is going to be development of tangible hands-on versus practicality or academic work. So the kids that are in the engineering might not have the tactical skills that they need to create boards or wood or plastic or doing the different materials. Well, the construction kids or the wood kids or the metals have that knowledge. It's coming together to a space where we're not being siloed into one area. So everybody's going to be using that common space to, I always go back to the analogy, if you can dream it, you can build it. And that's truly what the innovation is. And I think Mike's had an opportunity, and Mr. Betcher's been up there also. The kids are actually creating different things for teachers right now, which is one of our stepping stones, is the educational process. So anything that will help the kids with the education, the teachers with the education in the room they're doing. Mr. Betcher uses it for his projects.
Yeah, for the projects in the Woods class, I put a piece in there that they had to use some sort of technology, whether it's a CNC machine or the laser engraver, so they're using some of those other technologies that they're getting out of their comfort zone rather than just, so they're having to design something rather than just sitting in the lab building it. So they're seeing, like as you mentioned earlier, somebody who is becoming a welder could easily decide that they wanted to become an engineer, and this is kind of the same thing. They took these Woods classes, they enjoyed them, now they're having to do something on the other side, maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone, but they're seeing how that other side, how both those sides coincide with each other. And that's really what this class is about. It's getting some of the people that have...
What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the kids to listen that, from point A to point B, we know that reality in life is, it's not a straight shot. You end up going to C to D to E to A to get all the way to point B, because that's the reality. Life hands you those things. Kids do fail in this. Kids do make mistakes. Kids learn from their innovations and reflect on what they're doing and make those changes as we're going and accomplishing something from going to that point A to B, but it might be 4 or 5 different steps that they're going to. So it's really a cultivating thing, and like I said, it's a needs area that we have to have based off the capstone courses that are currently going to be enrolled.
Yeah, these courses ultimately lead to an internship in the Accelerator Lab, and then those students are the ones that are going out and working with other students in other classrooms.
Right. One of the things is that we do not want to have teachers inundated. We can put all these new initiatives on it. And we thought long and hard. This has been a 2-year process that we've gone through, that we actually got this up and going. The whole tech ed department, we did not want teachers to have any more feel like they had. So actually what the kids are doing is it's being driven by the students. The students are actually going out. One of the big aspects is we wanted everything to be mobile. So everything, like these 3D printers are out. They can be taken out by teachers into different areas like science or, in your area that can be done. It can roll right down with an intern that can train the kids and help them. So the exposure is getting them out there, and it's getting the kids outside their comfort zone instead of just being in that one area. They're learning different skills, which is the ACP.
And then the last course that we're bringing this evening is an additional AP course. We currently offer AP Physics 1, and we would like to offer AP Physics C. This is a calculus-based AP Physics course. And of the two, this course is accepted for college credit more frequently than the AP Physics 1 is. Mr. Volo and I are continuing to have conversations about are we going to continue to offer both moving forward. We didn't want to eliminate one at this point because there is a student population that is interested in taking that course. But we felt like the addition of Physics C was an important one and frankly an aspect we were missing in our current AP curriculum. And so we would like to add this course.
So we have an AP Physics 1,
Yes,
and that's the only other AP Physics class?
yes.
So this wouldn't be naturally called AP Physics 2?
No.
They actually have a separate 2.
There's a 1 and, it's kind of
There's already a
convoluted.
2?
There's a 1 and a 2.
College Board is a strange physics.
But 2 isn't really offered anywhere. It's 1 and C. Those are typically the courses that
There's
are
an
offered.
AP Physics B too.
But it
Yeah.
stands for Calc?
No.
I'm not sure what the C stands for.
Does everyone understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I get it.
This class, you go AP Physics C.
Yep.
Is that because that's what they're calling it? which
That's
is
what
why
they call
what
it.
we're
That's the
calling
College
We have to
Board's
call it what they
trademark
call it.
name,
Yeah.
I'm talking to the wrong people, right?
yeah. Trevor Packard, College Board.
I guess the last thing I would say is, I can't say enough about our tremendous teaching staff. These courses that, by the time they get here, we're talking about years of work that our teachers are engaging in, from learning about this concept of a capstone, to pushing their own practice, to surveying students, to having conversations with colleagues. And ultimately, we feel a really good product on the back end that meets the needs of our kids. And so we have a phenomenal teaching staff that has put a ton of time into the development of these courses to get them to a point where we can bring them here. And once they're approved, there's a tremendous amount of time that goes into, continuing to develop those courses and building those experiences over time. So I think we're lucky to have the talented staff we have, and they do a great job helping work alongside us to get these courses designed.
Hold on.
Mr. Cohen, are you looking for one motion or
We're
several?
Looking for one motion to accept all of the course change proposals that you heard tonight.
I'll make a motion to accept all the course change proposals.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Lewis and a second by Mrs. Larson. Is there any discussion?
I would say thanks for the very comprehensive presentation, because just reading the material beforehand, I did have a lot of questions. You filled in the gaps nicely. So thank you, and thank you for your work.
And the cost is in the budget? The next budget, or?
Sounds like we're on the hook for it no matter what.
We always can use money.
Just be nice how much we're spending here.
We have to have students take them first. And then we'll know how much we're spending. We have enough money to develop them and move ahead with them, and then we'll find out whether these courses run or other courses run at that point.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and for the report.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Item 8C is the youth options request. That also is an action item. Mr. Volo.
Yep. What I believe you have given to you is a document that contains the youth option requests, as well as a brochure that describes youth options programs. So what we have is a series of courses that would meet the criteria laid out by the state through the youth options statutes. And the applications are kind of presented, again, you'll notice numeric things, so the course names for the actual course, and then the alternate course on a separate page. Those requests for those courses kind of parrot and go back and forth. So, for example, application 1 did not list an alternative course. In that student's case, I believe that's the one course that he or she really wants to take. So as we kind of go through, and I'm not sure how we normally kind of run through these.
I think just take questions.
Okay.
So there were 7 students that applied for youth options.
So these were separate
7.
applications. In a couple cases, we had students who submitted an application for MATC and an application for UW-Milwaukee. We chose to list them as separate applications.
Right. So it would be fair to say that the application number is differentiated by the different person.
There were 5 students, right, there were 5 students that had applied.
Well, there are 5 students.
So 2 of those students submitted 2 applications. One application for one institution and one application for another.
Okay.
4.
Because in the past, we understand that this is statutory essentially, and you do the vetting and you find out if there's equivalent class offered, and or if they've
blaze through all our alternatives and you come before us and it has to get approved. Like the English or Spanish was their native language. Last year, there was a course that they already took the capstone and they're speaking it natively, so that made sense. But this year, there's more questions in here than I've ever had with the youth options request. We don't offer French at the high school. So why is first semester French something that we have to provide in a youth options request when there's a whole host of other languages? Couldn't anybody then want to take a different language and then say then we have to pay for it?
Yeah, they could.
Correct.
Yeah, they've exceeded our curriculum because we don't offer a French course.
We don't have a comparable course, so anything we don't have, they can take as youth options.
I would argue we have a comparable language course.
I
and
would
that's
too.
Spanish or Japanese or German.
Yeah.
But it's not comparable to this course because they can't learn French at our high school.
But it's still a foreign language.
I mean, the skill is foreign language, learning a foreign language. That's
Because
the
our
experience you're
graduation
trying to-
requirement, we have a foreign language graduation requirement? We don't. Okay, so it doesn't go toward the graduation requirement. You can understand what I'm saying. I mean, and now there's an appeal process. If it would ever get denied, there's an appeal process. I've never been involved in denying a class. But that's just one example of, so there's, so that's a gap in the system essentially, what you're saying?
Really, the two statutory requirements are, do we offer a comparable course? And they would say that it's a comparable in content and in skills that are taught in the course. And then they would ask if we would award high school credit for that course. And beyond that, if it meets those criteria, then we approve it.
Am I correct in saying that we are obligated by statute to approve these requests?
And
Yes.
I would add that we speak to the students at length between school counselors, myself, and try to engage them in the, what can we give you here? And to be really frank with some of these students, I think that they're aware of what opportunity they can get statutorily, and their mindset is to take advantage of that opportunity based on the youth options program. So in terms of providing a different option in our high school or through other things, or saying, hey, what about this, or would you consider this? You know, they're sort of, nope, this is what I want to do.
So they understand the rights essentially and that, okay.
That'd be a fair assumption.
I'd also point to under current course options language, they could take any two courses for any reason, and we have no denial criteria. And it's the same cost. So whether they go to the youth options route or the course options route, they ultimately can take those courses.
Well, you do reference a form that they have to fill out. And when I look at the form, the board's action has 3 separate boxes here. Comparable course offered, yes or no. Approved for high school credit, a checkbox, either check it or you don't. And the number of high school credits. So do we have to approve it for high school credit if we have other options to earn credits?
We have.
Why do we have to accept theirs? And this is our high school, this is our degree.
Sure. We have never.
Is there a way to
We have
say, no,
never
we're not
not accepted, to the best of my knowledge, we have never not accepted a college-level course as not qualifying for credit towards our high school diploma.
I think I don't know why we couldn't.
And I would add.
And I'm not that I'm arguing we should do this now, because I understand this program is changing. But if it were continuing as it currently is, I would, I voted no consistently the last couple of years, but if it wasn't changing, I would be voting no again for the same reasons that you guys are starting to your point, that, we're a high school, right? We're not, and there's limits to what of draining resources away from our core purpose. So I think if I'm, I think this might be a way to say no, but I'm not, this time they're kind of making some changes. So I appreciate that there's some changes, because I don't know if we can really continue down this path if it's really viable.
I'll be
for us.
completely honest, the changes are opening up flexibility for
Correct.
students,
Correct.
not
They
restricting
are.
it more.
And as we've talked about tonight, it's at a state level. So if you want to influence that, you have to get engaged with your legislators around this, because it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's state that requires us to provide these opportunities to the children. And if you do say no, it will go to appeal to the state superintendent, and I'm quite certain that we would fail.
Yeah, I didn't want to, oh, go ahead, sorry, Mike.
I would just add change it to 9/12 versus, 11/12. I know other states neighboring us that have had that wider window open, and that quite frankly raises a lot of concerns, right? You're making a college transcript when you're 14 years old. I mean, there's a lot of implications with that. But that being said, I think another piece of, we also have not typically denied, at least for elective credit, courses that come from other high schools that might be quite different than our own course catalog. And if we go down that route, we just would need to have very sound criteria to deny those course credits. And I mean, so imagine a student comes from a boarding school, or I mean, any number of myriad of high schools even. Right now, our policy is to try to see where stuff matches, and again, vet the descriptions and make them work for courses that are equivalent. And if courses aren't equivalent, grant them credit that's elective, if that's appropriate, it was taken in a high school that's accredited, wherever they were.
Has the student that wants to take the French taken any other languages?
I believe yes. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe that's, yes. If I remember the post-secondary, I'm fairly certain that the student has taken, I can't remember if it was more than 2 years, but I thought the answer was yes.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to go down a path where we start denying kids their opportunities. That's not at all. And I've never had this kind of a lengthy discussion over this stuff anyway, because it's always been, in my mind, pretty cut and dried. And I'm like, that's great. They're going out to get a different opportunity, different education, moving beyond what we can offer. But there was just a few things on the list. Intro to yoga.
Yeah.
We don't have any courses that are in the, like, we got fitness through dance. I mean, is that?
And the student took that course.
Okay,
And-
so check.
And even our instructor has taught actual dance classes at UWM.
Right.
And was quite familiar with the difference between her intro to dance and the other course at UWM. 'Cause,
Yeah. So.
And when you think about the kinds of electives at a college level, I mean, there's so many that we could never say we, compare to half of them.
The other thing that's important to remember here is the students still have to apply to the university, they still have to be accepted, and these courses still have to fit into their schedule. Otherwise, they don't take the courses, and we ultimately don't pay for them, right? Like, they're trying to these students are savvy enough that they're trying to open up their options and get these courses approved. And then they'll apply to these schools and see what fits and what doesn't fit. And that, I think that's why you're seeing kind of the breadth of courses there. And again, it speaks to my point earlier about, let's get them on a more focused path than some of these kind of sporadic courses that they're wanting to take.
And I'd rather be at, I want to keep students at the high school. So again, like, we talk to staff about those criteria of needs. It's hard to look at this list and say, well, we have a definite need, right? But I think it definitely can start conversations or continue conversations about what are we going to offer students so they choose to take courses each semester of their all 4 years, right? Because our experiences are that rich. And right now, students are choosing not to do that for a variety of reasons, and these students are choosing to go elsewhere.
So it looks like 2 students would be essentially they would be off campus the whole day. I mean, so if you're not even setting foot on our campus, how can you be a student of Franklin High School? I don't understand. And aren't they essentially graduating early and just doing their own thing? What's the difference there?
We can't force a student to graduate early, right, even if they've met our graduation requirements. So in the case you're speaking of, there's a student who maybe has met our graduation requirements and is saying, I want to take post-secondary courses my spring semester at a university. And so that's what they're asking to do.
Well, and I would add for our language, I prefer to say completing early, because we only have our own graduation ceremony. That's in June. No one graduates early, per se. They complete early. And those students who complete early thus forfeit the opportunity to do this. So if a student is savvy enough to know that completing early would preclude me from taking advantage of the opportunities, also knows that if you complete early, you're not necessarily a full-time student for maybe other things that your family has responsibilities for. It could be insurance, other implications there. There used to be a pretty good reason to complete early. And again, these students then are not choosing to do that, although they may be able to.
The statute allows up to 18 credits, and it says specifically in the guidelines that a district may not limit the number of credits per semester that a student can take through youth options.
Is this one of the more exhaustive lists you gentlemen have
Yes,
seen?
it's the most exhaustive list I've seen.
Do we have students that complete early
Yeah,
Yes.
every year?
most years, most years.
So on this list, there's like application number 3, number 3, number 3, number, is that one student
One student. those
applied
are-
for all of those
So
courses?
that's one of their applications, yes.
All right.
So 3 goes to 3, 4 with 4.
Okay.
So we do have students that do complete early. I guess you start to ask yourself, what does a high school diploma mean? Is it seat time? You know, is it 4 years doing something? Or is it curriculum that represents certain knowledge? And some kids get done earlier than other ones might need more time. But we got to kind of figure out what that, it's not just, because their high school diploma will represent 18 credits of college, whereas somebody else has a high school diploma, and it just represents a high school diploma.
But also,
You can still
What
get
are we paying
you can still
for?
get college credit through AP classes.
I would point out, yeah, we have 30
I mean-
dual credit granting courses right now at the high school. So we have a robust number of courses that students can earn college credit through.
Within our cost, that's what we pay for. But when you start having to spend it outside of our program, that's the part where it seems like we could lose control of where this all goes.
Again, it's a matter of working with the legislators who, feel that, parents probably have come forward with this and have responded to it with legislation, and, school boards need to react to that if they choose to or not. And I'm sure there are other school boards in difficult situations financially where they find this very difficult to do.
Well, the landscape's changing, there's no doubt, and there's more pressure on public education to provide a greater variety of what's available. So that's just reality, but that doesn't mean that's wrong, doesn't mean, this is, this is great that you're seeing this type of interest, but they definitely do know what's available, and so, well, that's fine. Like you said, obviously you go through the programs, you have to vet them, you make sure, and usually this comes before us, and we're like, okay, sounds good. So, but tonight was really a discussion, because I hadn't seen a list like this. Well,
We did
ever.
deny some courses off the
Yeah.
original application.
You did?
Economics course, for example, that did not take our AP economics course or economics.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
There is an economics course on here.
Yeah, it's an error. It should not be on there.
Should not be that, okay.
Yeah, we denied.
So, what year is this for then? Is this for the spring
This would be
semester?
spring for this current year.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the youth options request for the spring 2017-18 school year.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Larson, any discussion?
To some of the earlier points, I know I might be in the minority here, but I think our job in educating students includes that duty to educate students at whatever level and ability they are at. So regardless of whether they're taking high school courses in high school only, or at taking advantage of the state program to take and receive up to 18 credits at a college institution, I think that's fantastic, and we're providing that individual that education, that they're fit at their level by the time they graduate and are the best fit to be entering the college or career readiness, to be college or career ready by the time they graduate. And I think that's our duty. So, it's honestly my opinion, when we talk about the MATC program and paying up to 18 credits, that we would pay up to the 30 credits to allow that person to take the course to prepare themselves to be college and career ready by the time they graduate from the high school. And I understand I might be in a minority here, but regardless, if they have other options to take a language and French is the language they want to take, I think we should provide them the opportunity. So I think if that discussion ever comes down where we deny credits, I think it's absolutely wrong, and would fully support anyone in their endeavor to obtain a higher education, whether it's at the high school level or at college.
And I would say I support that they certainly have that opportunity.
I agree with what
It's a
you're,
question of cost.
yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I think this is a point that, as a disabled vet, the UW system, which includes MATC, offers so many ways for tuition remission that we should be able to lobby both parents and school boards, that the legislature do something to make this a tuition remission type exchange so that it's no net cost to the district.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Gamble.
Aye.
Mrs. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski.
No again, sorry.
And I say yes.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item 8D, the communications planning discussion with Dr. Miller and Mrs. Ellahausen.
So I just want to take a little time tonight, not a lot, to talk about communication planning in the district and our communications plan. We really have a long history of valuing communication. I'm going to take you down a little historical path in terms of our communications plan in the district. We actually have policy as well around community relations. It's policy 1100, and I'd just like to read a short part of that to you, so you don't have to look it up on board docs. But in our policy, it states, adequate public support is dependent upon the maintenance of positive public opinion. Opinions are established on the basis of available information or the lack of it. Misinformation grows where information voids exist. It is the policy of the Franklin Public School District to maintain a continuing information program from compiling and distributing news of events, noteworthy facts, statistics, plans, and forecasts necessary for the creation of an interested and informed public. Meeting the needs of the community and gaining the support to meet those needs depends upon strategically planned two-way communication between the district and the public. The district encourages the community to make known its desires, and the district to make known its plans and actions. So this policy was first adopted in 1995, and then the board looked at it again in 2006. Our actual first kind of look at this that I could find historically, Mr. Milzer helped me with this research because we've been around the longest, was in 1999. And we did our first communications audit then, and it was done by the National School Public Relations Association. And after they had done the audit, they'd made some recommendations and put them into some specific categories. So those categories were setting direction for effective internal communications, developing trust, everyday staff communication, and improving written and other communications. So that was kind of the broad categories that came out of that audit. From those categories, a communications plan, essentially our first communications plan, was developed. And there were categories within the plan itself that pertained to internal communications, which included things like develop a staff bulletin, and have an internal communications liaison for each building. Another category of the plan was what are our external communications going to be. That had to do with annual reports, the opening doors communication, and our website. The third area was public engagement, and that one of the things that was listed there was very interesting in this plan was the topic of grading frequency for K-6 specials. So pretty specific item within the public engagement was being addressed back then. And there was an area about community relations and an advisory committee. A couple of the other areas were media relations, school board relations, recognition, and crisis management. So our first plan had all of those pieces. And within that plan, there were specific activities, timeline, and an evaluation process. The next plan that I was able to obtain was from 2002 and 2004, and that was our strategic communications plan. And that plan had 3 strategies. The first strategy was community relations results in increased support and advocacy for Franklin Public Schools. I have Forest Park on my mind. Build a stronger image and identity for Franklin Public Schools in the Metro Milwaukee area. Actually, I had 4 strategies. Empower employees to take ownership in Franklin Public Schools. And the 4th was crisis communication. So that plan focused on those 4 areas. And then within that plan, it was specifically outlined what the tactics were, the timeline, the budget, and then the evaluation process. So we have a history of like very refined communication plans with specific activities and evaluations. Since then, since we've done those plans, we've relied on our communications coordinator to develop and implement our communication plan. I put in front of you our current communication plan. It is on our website if anyone wants to look it up, but I thought just making it handy for you today might be a good idea. The current communication plan describes the audiences, key messages, and communication tools. So you can see that in the document. So really to achieve, and I thought about this, our mission, which is to inspire that personal success in all of our students through a partnership with our families and community, we need to ensure that we're engaging in something I said earlier in that very first plan, meaningful two-way communication. One of the operational principles that I talk about with the staff all the time, and I'm hearing directors talk about it, and the principles I'm pleased, is that change is the result of study and action. This is an area that we need to study and take action in. So with that, I have been doing a little bit, not a lot, because I'm new at this job, investigating what other districts are doing. I met with the communications coordinator from Kenosha that has a robust program around communications. And I've been talking a lot with Valley, and I'm about to turn this over to Valley. She's had a lot of experience with this area in her previous school district of West Bend, and she also has a network of people that she's been talking to. But together, what we've been talking about is actually how to move forward with developing a good communications plan for the district. So I think with that in mind, before I do turn it over to Valley, who, as you know, is also leading some public relations for our school district, I would just like to add that the purpose of doing any kind of communication audit or engaging in increased communication, two-way communication, is to make sure that we have an engaged community, that we're engaged with the people we work for and with. So with that, I'm going to ask Valley to talk a little bit further about this audit and some things that we've talked about moving forward with doing in the district.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, members of the community, board, and administration. So I'm going to kind of try to tweak some of what I have here. Judy had engaged, had pulled in a lot of what is also in my notes, but I've had the opportunity with my early observations moving into month 3 to kind of get to know Franklin, everything Franklin, from some chamber activities to being in the schools, meeting some parents, some members of our city, county, just area. And we have tremendous staff here. That, in my early observations, we have very committed staff. And we have staff that are willing to step up and pull on the same end of the rope. And that's really a great place to be. Judy indicated, as part of my role, I'm charged with ensuring that our communication functions are the most effective for all our key stakeholders. I think in education, we have a lot of stakeholders, and we need to be cognizant of that. When we think about it, students are a stakeholder, parents, employees, our staff, businesses, community, and taxpayers. And each of those stakeholder groups have different vested interests that we have a responsibility to try to engage, to Judy's point earlier. And I kind of took them apart and I looked at them. You know, when we look at our staff, we really want to retain quality staff, but we also want them to be district ambassadors. I mean, that's part of their role in the system. With parents, we need to be sure they're informed, but also engaged with and supportive of the district, their schools, their students. With the taxpayers and the larger community, one of the key goals there is to make sure that we are transparent, we're accessible, we partner with them, and that they see value in the district, because I think we'd all agree strong community equals strong schools. So Judy really pointed out that two-way. I'd simply add to it that when I look at that, it's ongoing, so it's meaningful, but it's also ongoing two-way communication and engagement programs that keep those key stakeholders informed and involved. Demonstrate our fiscal and educational accountability and help build support for our schools. That brings in that PR part and the communications part. We have a good problem. We have good problems here. And so with that comes opportunities. Because what I might say might seem critical, but I would just ask you to listen and consider that our current state is simply an opportunity for improvement. We are certainly looking at always being better. So it's a way to do that through an audit process to garner those opportunities for improvement. In my observation and listening, it isn't, there are things going on. We are doing things. What is lacking is systematic and systemic implementation of those things aligned to a strategic aim. And so that's where I see our greatest gaps existing. The other part is, and again, you heard this, in the recent near future, we really haven't engaged those stakeholder groups in giving us feedback, input into those current systems to say where we are effective, where are our strengths, where are our opportunities, and where are our gaps. So in order to demonstrate that trust, the accountability and the support for the community around our communications aligned to that strategic aim, we need to collect some input. We need to listen and see what's working and where we have gaps. An audit, again, we did an audit here in Franklin in '99. The process is probably not drastically different, although it incorporates far more social media now than certainly back in 1999 when a hashtag probably really still was the number symbol. But it's amazing when you ask a third grader, they have no idea that that means anything other than a hashtag. But the audit is using a third party that's an expert in the field that has no biases for any one particular district to really come in, perform the work, and they really do a thorough analysis of what we're currently doing, what are we doing, where are we disseminating information, where are we engaging that input, and then they are going to start their work to really look for those gaps to help us build then a strategic plan. So it's a pretty thorough process. Some of the things that you see in audits are current perceptions about the district, so not surprised to see back then, right, around grading, because they're surfacing parent, community, staff issues or concerns, whether our current efforts are effective. Do they even know what our current efforts are? How do we know that they're meeting those target audiences? What new strategies are warranted? Baseline measures. That's one thing I was listening for, was how did we measure the effectiveness of those prior plans, and how are we measuring our current effectiveness of the plan that you see in front of you? And then some short and long-term goals. And there's really just 4 steps. Again, it's the analyzing our current program. Then they go into the listening mode to those key stakeholder groups. This is typically focus groups of each stakeholder type, allowing for variety of voice and a balanced perspective. They also then will typically do some type of formal survey to try to catch those that aren't in the focus groups, and then recommendations for a strategic program. It's not a quick process. When you look at a good audit, it starts with that analyzation of what we're currently doing, which would ideally be in the month of December. January, February would be the focus groups, and then they would develop their report, and we would have that back in early spring. That gives us also time to use the new school year to deploy some of those pieces that come through their plan. In the balance, we will continue with the efforts we have. We're doing some new things this year around communication with staff that's different, presence in the buildings, and we'll keep those efforts moving. The engagement survey certainly has some questions around communication that helps give us benchmark measures as well that we didn't have in the past. So those efforts will continue, but then the strategic plan that comes out in the spring will really pull together and allow us to deploy in the 18-19 school year. I think twofold. One, this type of process aligns with our value around continuous improvement. It's what it's about. Changes the result of study and action. It speaks to that. It demonstrates our ability to bring that value into action, and it also demonstrates our commitment to all of those key stakeholders around building stronger trust. And lastly, it aligns perfectly with our journey to get better. So that's what we would begin moving forward with in the near future.
So we're considering an audit?
We're
Or
going to
we're currently
proceed.
in
We're going to proceed with an audit this year?
this year?
Yeah.
2017, 2018?
Mhm.
Or- okay.
Beginning in December.
And we found an external partner that,
There are several that do work in this field. It's just deciding on the right one for Franklin.
what we're looking at in terms of budget?
Approximately 10,000 for the audit. That includes everything from start to finish.
And what's really important is it isn't just the audit, it's the audit and the strategic plan.
Typically, you will see a 3 to potentially 5-year strategic plan with those short and long-term goals, as well as the benchmark measures.
And when you say strategic plan, you're talking about strategic communications plan.
Correct. Yes.
Ms. Ellihausen, what social media platforms are we currently on? Twitter, Facebook? We have the website.
Page 4.
Page 4.
Our Facebook is our predominant social media tool that we use.
Our current communications plan, frankly, it came back to us maybe every other year, and it was just brought to us, and we basically talked about the website. That's all it was. We didn't really have a communications plan. It's just tacked up on our website, and we didn't really ever talk about it. So I think this is a very good idea, and Dr. Miller, maybe you want to touch on, this is partially why Mrs. Ellihausen was hired.
Right, so I've discussed that with the board, that role in HR was moving beyond just being an HR person, dealing with personnel, to dealing with public relations, which is really engagement with staff and engagement, district-wide with the community.
We have a lot to be proud of in this district. Again, it's a good problem to have. It's really pulling it together strategically to both brand Franklin and be proud of Franklin, and also gather that feedback so that, again, we can think about informed and involved. When you, again, go back to each of those key stakeholder groups, you want district ambassadors in your staff. You want parents that support our schools and are able to articulate that publicly, and for our taxpayer base and larger business community, we want strong partners, strong schools, strong community. So when you think about enrollment, think about the things we even talked about tonight, we need to develop that, again, systematically and systemically, so that it exists, and it's living and breathing here every day. And it, again, it isn't that we're not doing good things. We are. We do good things right now. It's pulling them together in a much more strategic framework.
So you mentioned good problem to have, you mentioned that a couple times. To which are you referring?
The fact that we have parents that want to be involved is a good problem to have. The fact that our staff are committed to our system, but they need the tools or the resources to help become those ambassadors is a good problem to have. The fact that we're growing in enrollment and we have families that want to move here and put their children here, how do we celebrate that? We've got 150 business partners, Mr. Cohn, I think.
Yes, correct.
That's a good problem to have. How do we celebrate that? How do we pull it together through our communication efforts?
The problem being the communication with all, because that's a
Pulling them all,
great
because we get
success.
disconnected messages around those things, and then the ability to support becomes divided.
Who manages our social media platforms right now? Our
Megan.
posts, who posts?
Megan.
Megan does. I'm just, I guess I don't understand why we're going to get an audit. I think we kind of know what our problems are. I mean, I think frankly, if you look to the Now publications or something, you know, I personally, you know, I feel like Oak Creek gets coverage and we don't on issues. And whether that's our internal comms person or group, your group now, to manage that presence and platform, I think that's great. We have a centralized person that can manage that platform. Frankly, I feel like spending $10K for an external audit for telling us a strategic plan is something that, frankly, I would look to you for. You know, you're kind of the comms person, so you know, I would value your input there. But you know, I don't know. We've talked about it ad nauseum, the problems that we've had with visibility and having someone from the newspaper show up to meetings when we talk about the budget, for example, doesn't occur anymore. So I feel like we know what our problems are, and I feel like sometimes we survey ourselves to death with. I feel like every year we get 3 or 4 surveys that tell us how staff feels or how the building atmosphere is, or from parents. I just feel like we're going after something that we already know the answer to.
With all due respect, I don't think we know. I don't think we know. I don't think parents and community members have had a voice, a means by which to tell us how they feel about being engaged in our school district, or how they feel about how we've been communicating, or the mode, or the preference around that. It really affords us that opportunity to ask our parents and ask our community, you know, what do you want from us as a school district? How do you want to engage with this school district?
Don't they kind of tell us that with the crowds that show up at these meetings?
I think there's many people who aren't here who, you know, have an opinion about the school district. That would be of great value for us to hear. It's important to have a plan around communications if you want to do it well. I think we agree on that, correct? I think the point here is, do we need to find out from others what should be in that plan? And I feel we do. I feel we need to find out from our constituents what should be in our plan to communicate and interact with our public.
So I'm not saying that we don't receive feedback. You know, if we're going to go to a third party to basically produce a survey, then let's sell it that way, that we're receiving feedback. But to say that we're paying someone to come up with our strategic plan when I feel like that's something that, frankly, I would expect us to do in-house.
I'm sure that it will be a partnership, but frankly, there were vendors who just go out and get this information and then dump it in your lap. You know, we want to continue to work with a vendor who can help us without a biased look at that information to say, this is the way you should structure your plan. These are the pieces we would recommend in your plan. Ultimately, it's our decision what goes in our plan. But, you know, there's a lot of, I think, bias that you don't even realize when you're looking at these issues.
I don't disagree with that.
This allows us to make sure we're truly representing the constituents here and developing a good plan that meets their needs. And, you know, a piece that we're talking about here is promoting our district. That needs to be a big part of our plan. We do great things, and we need to promote our district.
I understand, and I think with staff, we do have the greater ability to get the benchmark data, and we have some larger measures. I don't see where we've surveyed even routinely our parent base or our community around what we are doing, and what's working, and where our gaps are and where our opportunities are. An audit, take the cost out, is a very healthy process to go through. It's a very humbling process because many of us go in with bias around it because it becomes personal, and we have to let go of that to be professional about getting that feedback and allowing it to enrich what we're currently doing and allow us to listen. But the bias part is the reason the audit does it justice. And the feedback groups are rich in terms of allowing that voice to actually come through and that balanced perspective to come through in the feedback they gather. Survey is important, it's another tool, but it's not the only tool that will be used.
Plus, any other time I recall doing a survey on communication, it was connected to a building project. And to me, that's skewed, because I might be getting some feedback on communication, but they've got other things on, the constituents have other things on their minds when they're looking at that survey.
So you've interviewed some companies, and you decided someone you want to go with.
We're getting close to making.
You're getting close, you have it,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
So just talk us through a little bit about what are some of the things you're hearing as far as the process? Does it start with a survey like Mr. Lewis suggested? Does it have, is
So
it interviews, is it
the
group
process-
meetings? How does it work?
Yep, so the process starts with, whoever is the individual selected, they really start by looking at what we currently do. And much of that information is going to come from Megan. And the plan that's in place here, they're gonna wanna see what does it look like. They are gonna look for our benchmark measures. So every time we send out a newsletter, what's the open rate on it? What's your feedback been on it? How do you know if something's put in the newsletter that it's made it to that informed and involved state? They get into our website. They go on the Facebook posts. They're looking for certain measures within there to then assess what we're currently doing. What does that current platform look like? From there, they move into the focus groups. The board is a focus group. They will sit with the board as a focus group. Dr. Miller will be engaged heavily throughout, as well as then administration, staff, parents, community, business community, whoever we decide are the right stakeholders in that community base. And then they go through a series of questions. Each of those focus groups is upwards of an hour to gather feedback from the groups at hand. They're typically 15 to 20 people in each focus group. From that, they then synthesize all of that information and then determine the right survey that might go out again back to those stakeholders. So it could be a parent survey, it could be a staff survey, in the sense of kind of casting the net just a little bit larger than the focus group feedback. That then is what they use to develop the recommendations that fold into a strategic plan that say, here is your goals, and here is some strategies to deploy those goals. Here are the benchmark measures to then move forward after deploying to see if you're being effective in those measures.
So, and you have experience with these plans?
I have experience with the plan. I was not the PR person. I was part of an audit in the
So what would
prior
be a
district.
goal and a measure that would typically find in a communications plan? Because there really aren't any measures in this.
Correct.
What would be a typical goal and a measure?
Well, when you look at some of the goals, and again, the right ones for Franklin might be different than what comes through some others, but measures might be around an annual survey that parents feel informed, that they are able to be involved. So are we doing annual surveys around effective communication? A measure for staff is easily built through the engagement. When you look at social media, there are some very key significant number of measures, from the number of likes that we have, the fans that we have, the reposts that occur, the number of invites. So where are we at with some of those social media measures that indicate success of those platforms? In terms of a goal might be to develop a brand strategy around Franklin and determine how to make that a cohesive across the district, yet allowing each school to have some freedom within, to then begin the promotion around what we determine are our points of pride each year and celebrations. One of the action steps might be, if we go back to community partners, it might be to recognize them as one of our key stakeholders at a board meeting.
Thank you.
I'm going to beat Mrs. Witkowski to the punch. Was this in our budget? Did we budget for this?
You beat me to the punch, too.
Okay.
This is part of the HR budget. It's
Okay.
coming out of the Human Resources budget, which did not increase this year. So it's about prioritizing what you're going to do with your budget, and this is an appropriate thing that I believe needs to occur and would be part of the budget.
I guess I would have liked to have had a discussion about this beforehand, though. I feel blindsided right now.
So do I.
I feel like my breath was just sucked out of me, because I feel very blindsided by this.
Well, I'll take responsibility.
But the
Well,
board
I'm not
approves
trying to
spending.
I'm not trying to cast blame on anyone,
Yeah.
and when I see on the agenda, communication planning, and this is what's sitting before me, I think we're gonna talk about this. And then you gave us a very nice introduction, and I bought it. You know, I was involved in it and mentally, and then Valley starts talking, and she's talking all of a sudden strategic plan, and we're gonna do an audit, and we're gonna bring these people in, and they're gonna look at this, and I'm thinking, what did I miss? Did I miss this meeting? You know, where is this coming from? I really would have liked to have heard this or put this before us at one point. Could we have a discussion about this? This is something we're talking about. This is in our HR budget. We'd like to, what do you think about this, board? I feel like we missed a step here, and that makes me feel very unhappy, especially when you're talking about being transparent to our community. I don't feel like this was a very transparent agenda item.
And again, you know, it really is my directive to Ms. Ellihausen to move forward with this. I really feel it is necessary that we have a better plan. We've had better plans in the past, and it is, you know, part of what I believe we need to do. It is in the budget, and I believe the outcome will be really positive for the district. I appreciate the discussion around it tonight.
Was this specifically budgeted in the budget, or is something coming off our list to do this?
Within a budget, in a department, you have discretion about what things you'll do in a given year and how you'll spend those dollars. So this is part of that.
But we approve that as a board, the
You-
spending.
You approve
A
a
budget.
budget for a department, and the director has some discretion over what curriculum's purchased, or, you know, what services are provided through pupil services, what agencies HR works with to provide better support to staff. That's the reason we have a budget, to serve and provide from our department. So, you know, previous years, I used the budget for HireVue. I spent several $1,000s to get us involved in HireVue, because that was good for our district. So that's the discretion that is provided to the department within their budget.
Yeah, we don't dive into line item expenditures
No.
and stuff like that,
No,
so I
we-
think it's a very valid point,
Yeah.
Judy.
But this is a significant departure from things that we've done before. And from that, yeah, sure.
If it fits-
How
if it's-
many consultants have we worked with in the past?
Well, we recently did a school perception survey to find out about our staff. As I said, you know, we went on with HireVue as an HR function. You know, each department makes decisions about their budget to move the district forward, to help us get better. And this is something that I certainly have identified as what I wanted to see happen out of the HR department, to help us have a better plan around communication that we can sustain over time to do better in this area. I think if you look at our plan, you have to admit, it doesn't say much about what deliberate actions we take to communicate in the district with our constituents. And, you know, when I think about the school perceptions survey and the results of that survey, which were shared with you, I think we're in that position because of our communication issues. Not totally, but certainly in part. So I find this is an important thing for us to do. It's within the budget. We'll do what we can to negotiate the dollars. I think that the 10 was a little bit on the high end, but we'll work through that. Building the plan, we'll make sure that that's something that we're active in doing. And, you know, at the end, I hope the board is quite satisfied with a plan that's very clear about how we're going to communicate about Franklin Public Schools, within and outside of Franklin Public Schools.
My question would be, what would be the expectation of this audit team producing whatever results they are? Is it, you know, everything needs a purpose, or are we looking for this to help us define? We've got 5 different avenues for community outreach. So are we looking for this audit to help define better ways of using those avenues? Or maybe it's to come up with a new vision for community outreach? Those are the kind of questions I have on why we would do this.
Sure. So as I said, in previous audits, they came out with categories. The one was setting a direction for effective internal communications could be an outcome. Developing trust could be an outcome. Everyday staff communications, improving written and other communications. That was kind of the major outcomes of that first audit. So this audit would do the same. It would provide these categories in which we would develop strategies and action plans for achieving some goals in those areas. I mean, when you think about it, you know, we're doing things, but do we have any goals that we've set around this that we're working to achieve? I think that that would be important. So to answer your question, it will generate these categories. The other plan had internal communication, external. The category was public engagement. And within those categories, media relations, you know, you'll have some specific things laid out about what we're going to commit to do and who's going to be responsible and how we're going to measure progress. That's what a plan gives us around communication. And honestly, what's more important, you know, how we communicate with one another is pivotal to the work. In your employment, where you work, in your relationship, it's important. So obviously, I'm a strong advocate for moving forward. It's within the budget. I apologize if it's a surprise. I do. I apologize for that.
Is there a scope of work that is part of the I mean, you're getting out and you're soliciting consultants, so what is the scope of work? What does that look like? Usually there's like bullet points, like 5 things, the scope of work will do these things. You're going to analyze what we currently do.
Yeah.
We're going to do a survey. I'm not a fan of surveys about how we're communicating. I don't know if people really know how they want to be communicated with.
What's really key here are those focus groups, and we've used those before. We've used those often. We learn a lot. We used to call them World Cafes one time. These are
Well-
focus groups. And you will learn a lot there, but there's probably also a survey piece, but.
The current plan actually indicates that you are doing those things, from world cafes to surveys. With respect to the scope of work, again, it's an extensive scope. They will spend weeks looking at our current plan, the materials that support the plan. The first thing they will do is look for where are the current surveys, where are the current World Cafe outcomes that are indicated at the end of this plan. What's working? Where are we? The focus groups are really a big phase. They take upwards of 2 months to get through 8 to 10 to 12 focus groups of 20-ish each to get that input into their key questions around both informed communication and involved communication. From that, they then determine the need for a survey. And what that survey looks like is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach. It may be differentiated based upon the parent base than it is the staff base. And if we do a community survey of any sort, they would make that recommendation. From there, all of that is pulled together, and then they come back to us with a 3 to 5 year plan.
I would just like to say that we approved the budget at a certain dollar amount. We've been assured this is within the budget. We don't micromanage line item expenditures. Like I said, she's assured it won't go over budget, and it's something that they're very passionate about, and they feel like this is something that's needed to move us forward with some of the problems and issues that have come before this board in the last few months. And I support Judy in her endeavor to try and take the bull by the horns here, and let's go through this communication plan and see what comes out on the other end.
Well, to that, Judy mentioned almost day one when she got here, she wants to improve communication. And she's done things with the board, emails that we get, et cetera. Improvement in communication has happened. I just feel blindsided by a consultant. That's not a small step. That's not an insignificant move to go out and hire a consultant. They're going to start driving things here in our district. And I just felt there should have, I feel like Debbie, a little blindsided, that's all. But I don't, not supporting it.
And I respect that. What this is about for some of you is what's the value? What's the value going to be here? So I'm cognizant of that. Making sure that there's value in what we're doing here. That's important. So I will continue to communicate with you regarding the process so you know how things are moving forward. Thank you very much.
Item 8E is the superintendent's report on the school PTO meetings.
More of me. Okay, so I just wanted to take a little time to report on some of the PTO meetings that I've attended, and most recently, the parent meeting that occurred at Robinwood Elementary School last night. The board had requested that I report back after we had that meeting there. So I'm going to go through that with you right now. But I did want to highlight a couple things at the other schools. I did attend a couple of PTO meetings in October. At Southwood Glen, I attended a meeting there. It was quite a few people, I'd say 25 to 30 people attended that meeting. It was, during that meeting, there were teachers doing Words Their Way for the PTO group, so that was a nice presentation. And then they discussed a number of their fundraising activities. I won't go into detail what they were, but as I went to the next PTO meeting at Ben Franklin, they're pretty similar, you know, in terms of the book fair and the PTOs making meals for our teachers during conference nights, their fall festivals, so that was also similar. What was unique about Ben Franklin is they meet during the day 1 month, and then the next month they meet in the evening. So not all their meetings are in the evening. So a little bit smaller group there. I did go to the meeting during the day, but they were very friendly and welcoming, and enjoyed spending time with them. In November, I went to the Pleasant View PTO meeting. I was on that agenda listed as a guest speaker. I didn't really know I was going to be a guest speaker, but I was able to share some things about my background in the district and then some things about what's happening. I'm very interested in our new middle school, so I answered some questions about that. It was fun. They also had an art teacher that was a guest speaker that night, talking about how she's collaborating with her students and with teachers in the building. This art teacher had taught at Pleasant View a while ago, but hadn't been there in several years, and now is back at Pleasant View, so she was getting to know everybody again. So that was pleasant. Mr. Feckler seems to schedule speakers at his PTO meetings. He himself, with a classroom teacher, spoke about the literacy program at a previous PTO meeting there. And then he also had a member of the Franklin Foundation at his PTO meeting. So that was interesting. They also talked about some of the same things that are going on, the Knowledge-a-thon, and something fun called Donuts with Dad. So I thought, oh, that sounds pretty fun. And that takes me to our meeting last night at Robinwood. I'll go through, in terms of a report of what happened during that meeting at this time. So we did meet over at Robinwood last night. Ms. Preeman, Mr. Reuter, Mr. Cohn, and Mr. Nelson, and I attended the parent meeting. It was not an official PTO meeting. I just want to make that clear. It was a parent meeting, and it was set up at the request by the parents to the board. So we were there on behalf of that request. The PTO president did invite parents to send questions in advance, and there were a few of those sent in advance, which was helpful to the directors. So the main topics that were brought up that last night were, I'm just going to list them, student behavioral health, implementation process for our curriculums, amount of recess time, amount of time for lunch, crowding at Robinwood, 4K, reduction of 15 minutes of art class, testing, library time, parent-teacher conferences, and I put library time twice. So those are the main topics that came up last night. So I want to take a few minutes now to summarize, these topics with the board. So I have a few notes on that. So with regard to behavioral health of the students, the parents expressed a concern that behavioral health concerns can set a student back. Ms. Preeman shared the work around our social emotional learning that's happening both at the state level and what we're moving forward with here in Franklin. And she spoke about PBIS and focus groups that will be held in the district that will include parents. So she did respond to that area of behavioral health last night. To respond to questions about the implementation of our curriculums, Mr. Reuter and Mr. Cohn explained in detail our 5-year cycle of curriculum review and how teachers were engaged in the decision-making around our curriculum. They talked about the visits that teachers made to other schools and other districts prior to implementing our curriculum. Mr. Reuter explained that our literacy program is a highly researched program out of Columbia University and Teachers College, and there were some parents who did have some follow-up questions about that, which we were able to answer. He explained why time is needed for the specific aspects of balanced literacy and some of the things that are new in our current program that perhaps didn't exist in our last program that relate to the amount of time needed for the literacy program. And then when asked why some schools state they're doing workshop in less time than we have allocated for that, Mr. Reuter explained that the workshop model can be very broadly interpreted. And here in Franklin, we're not just doing the workshop model, we're doing the units of study. So that was explained. So moving on, the amount of time for recess provided to the children is a concern to parents. Mr. Nelson had identified that while it's not listed explicitly in the teachers' schedules, teachers do provide recess time as needed for their classes, but this lacks consistency. There's a strong desire by the parents that that we're more deliberate about ensuring recess time. So we're going to be discussing this further and moving forward with ensuring recess time for students beyond the lunch recess. So we're going to move forward with talking about that and being more deliberate about providing that time to children. The amount of time for lunch and crowding at Robinwood came up kind of together. Parents are concerned that their children feel pressured to hurry and eat their lunch. Mr. Nelson stated that this year he moved from 3 lunch periods to 4 because he has a very large school. Enrollment kind of made that necessary. He stated that children are allowed to take their time to eat, but the reality of it is children do feel pressured to go outside when they see their peers going outside. Parents suggested that children only eat lunch at lunchtime and not go out for recess, just eat lunch and go back to the classrooms. But it was shared that that wouldn't be possible because our teachers need their lunch break. So that would not give teachers enough time for lunch. With regard to overcrowding at Robinwood, parents asked what could be done. I explained that redistricting is a means by which we would deal with overcrowding, but the Board of Education really doesn't want to move forward with redistricting because we're opening a brand-new school in another year, and we just kind of have to get through this next year with a large number of students, and then there'll be some reprieve to that. This led to a discussion of 4K, and I indicated that I have a strong interest in 4K and would be working with the Board of Education on the topic of 4K in Franklin Public Schools. The 15-minute reduction in art class was brought up as a concern by parents. Parents are concerned about the reduction in time in both art and music. Data was shared regarding the time allocation for art and music in other school districts to convey to the parents. We've had more than many districts have. It was also shared that the 30-minute versus the 60 minutes allocation for art is being evaluated. And then Mr. Reuter shared that the way in which the lessons are delivered in art within these new frames is currently being evaluated within these new time frames. A parent expressed a concern regarding the number of tests that our students take. Mr. Cohn shared that the standardized tests that we do have the children take are required by law. I don't think there was one exception, or was there?
With the MAP assessment, we have a choice as to which assessment we use, but we have to use an assessment.
Okay. A parent expressed a concern that their child does not get to have a regular time each week to go to the library, get a book, and remain there and read. Mr. Nelson stated that teachers do take their students to the library to obtain books, but they don't stay there and read the books or go to the library for reading purposes. The classroom library and our focus on literacy has kind of moved that into the regular classroom. And then a parent shared her request to have parent-teacher conference with her child's teacher at the end of the school year so that we could talk with her about what work she could do over the summer with her child. But she did state she understood that that would be an additional teacher work day if we were to add that. So I believe it was a productive meeting with the parents. The parents expressed a strong interest in receiving more communication and being more involved. I conveyed that we would be doing a communication audit and that the goal was to increase parent engagement. The parents openly shared their concerns, and I believe their questions were answered. And then following the meeting, several parents remained to ask some follow-up questions, and then several thanked us for being there. So that's my report regarding.
parents?
I would say 25 or 30 parents were present last night. And the meeting was about an hour and a half, somewhere around there. And Miss Roberts did the babysitting. Thank you, Miss Roberts. Shout out to Miss Roberts. So just wanted to follow up on some of that information with you. Thank you.
Can I have one question? You can have a conference any time of year if you arrange it, correct?
Correct, with your individual teacher.
I have a question as well. If you are looking at putting in additional recess time, how does that impact the DPI minutes that are required?
We exceed the number of minutes at the elementary level for instruction every year.
Okay.
Do we throw that in there because of potential weather days that are lost, snow days?
We've just had a longer school day historically for, elementary typically has a longer instructional day.
Okay.
And it exceeds what the state requires for some reason.
Does the state require minutes or days?
Minutes. It's 11:37 at the high school and 10:50 hours, sorry, is that right? Help me.
That would be ours.
Yeah, I end up counting minutes, but it's hours.
And we exceed that by how much?
If off the top of my head, I think we have an additional 52 hours a year at the elementary level. And I don't think anybody wants to necessarily shorten their day. We have, a lot to do with kids. And it does help us with snow days, by the way. if we
Right.
have it. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for staying, Mr. Nelson, for that.
Thank you.
Item 8F is the treasurer's report. It's available in the board docs library. Then we're on to 9, school board liaison reports. We have 9A, a discussion of the liaison roles and responsibilities. And you have a draft, if you could open, and Dr. Miller had provided that a couple weeks ago, right after our last meeting. There is one addition to it if you haven't looked at it since then. So we'll just, she did ask if you had any additions to add to this. I don't know if you received any comments, but Franklin Public Schools Board Liaison role, the administrative department, the goal is to engage a board member with an administrative department for the purpose of helping other board members understand the work of that department. And the suggestion is for dues to discuss the department reports in advance of board meetings to support the administration in providing clear communication and ensure the potential questions are prepared for and/or addressed in the report, and meet 1 or 2 times a year with the department head and report to the full board for the purpose of keeping the full board up to speed regarding the department. And then it suggested don't represent the full board in suggested changes in content of administrative report or department functions. In other words, do that here at a board meeting. So are there any comments on any of this or suggestions or anything you want to add? Questions? Everybody's good?
It's good reminders. You know.
Okay. And suggestions for the board liaison role at the schools. To engage, the goal is to engage a board member with a school for the purpose of helping other board members understand the work of that school. Dues: attend at least one school event annually and share the information about this event with the full board. Arrange in advance to visit the classrooms. attend a PTO or PTA meeting and/or meet with the building principal at least one time annually, and share what is learned with the full board. Bring to the attention of the superintendent your ideas, questions, or concerns. And a suggested don't represent the full board in suggesting changes in school procedures, curriculum, or any other aspect of school operations. Any comments, additions, or suggestions? And if we approve this, whether if you want to do it by a vote or consensus, I don't know if you want to add this to our board handbook or just put it in the library.
I think the library would be fine.
I agree.
Library, okay. So is everyone okay with this?
Yeah.
You could always add to it later, or if you want to have something. Okay, looks like we're a go. Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure who worked on it besides you.
Me.
Okay.
Did a fine job.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Are there any board, 9B, any board liaison reports tonight? No? Okay, and then if we go to school visits, it's getting late. You'll see I have some school visits. And I don't want to really hop over them, but they're very thorough if you want to really look at them. But I had some good school visits this past week and a half. And it's going to take a while to load the one Southwood Glen one, which was my first one, if you want to look at it. But oh, okay. I have pictures in there because I couldn't resist. They were just so cute. I went on 11, the 2nd, November 2nd, and I was welcomed by Mrs. Cody. And my first stop was Mrs. Maurer's kindergarten class. And it was a day for writers' workshop at Southwood Glen. And they were working on 2-word labels and sentences. And then after doing that for a while, and I got to sit with the kids to work with a couple of them doing that, the kids had a brain break, which is like a recess, and they got to dance and move to Kids Bop. And some of the kids weren't interested in doing that, so they just got to sit and rest. And it was a lot of fun for the ones that did it, and the other ones just watched. Then I joined 2 students as the class worked further on word labels, and then they were forming sentences, and they had gathered outside rocks and pine cones and things like that. And so I helped 2 students do that. And my next class was an art class, Ms. Rudman's class, and I was at the second half of a 60-minute class, and they were working on Egyptian art that included art history, and they were making these beautiful pyramid paintings with pastels, and they had to put artifacts, and there's a picture of the artifacts they had to place in there. And if they got done early enough, they had to just pick some like coloring projects to do, and then they took them home. And the next art class was a 30-minute class, really very well organized, and they were doing the beautiful weaving project that's in there. Now, am I saying this right? I think it's mandalas, real intricate weaving projects. And if they finished that early enough, then they would go on to the next project, which was weaving placemats. And the next class I went to, Ms. Krasinski's class and Ms. Nass, which was also, this was a writing workshop, and they had a video, and then they did some reading, working in small groups. And I got to talk to the kids about why they chose their books that they chose. And one little girl, rather than sit in the group, she chose to sit in a box in the corner because she liked privacy. I mean, she's in a box just for some private time. Then I went to Mr. Molner's 6th grade math class and Mr. Allen's writer's workshop, and then I saw some kids with Miss Davis getting some additional help for their math, and then Miss Cody just took me around Southwood Glen, so that was a great visit. And then I had a really nice time at Robinwood. Let's see, that was on the next day on 11/3, and I visited Miss Davis' kindergarten class, and they were also doing a reading and writers workshop, and the same idea with the 2-word labels and sentences, although they did a little different. They were using their books, and I went off to the side with some little girls, and they're working together, and they're, you know how little kids memorize books when they're by themselves. They're not even looking at the books, they were just memorizing the books and reading them to each other. But when they went back with the teacher, they read the books, but I could tell they were memorizing the books. And it was a class, that was a pretty integrated class, wasn't it? With students, a really nice class, and I believe there were at least 2 aides in the class that day. Yeah, it's a very busy class. And then I went on to Miss Weinstein's first graders, and it was really interesting because they were working on publishing their own books and complimenting each other on the ones who had finished their books, and then they went on to make how-to books. And a couple of the kids in there are showing how one wanted to do a book on how to play soccer and how to be a teacher. And then they had a brain break, which again was like another recess, and it was just really involved. We're going on a bear hunt, and they were just really animated, and they spread out in the whole classroom to do this brain break. And then I went to Miss Chez's second grade 30-minute art class, and they did these emoji art projects that were taking a couple days, where they had to, that day they were putting the base paint on the artwork, and then the next time they would put the detail on it. And then Mr. Nelson took me on a walk and talk around the school, and we went on the playground, and then we did stop in Miss Rinder's music class, and she showed me those step scales there, and how even literacy is done with those step scales, because they're learning, well, you know, once you learn the scales, you can learn all the music, you know, that you need to learn once you learn the scales. So thank you for that visit. And then I went to Forest Park Middle School, and unfortunately, Mrs. King was sick that day, but I still had a good tour with Mr. Miziak. And I went to Mr. Adams' tech class, and that is such a busy class, and I got to see the molding, the plastic molding that was done, and he making all these little tools, and then I got to see them make the next class cars, and there's aides in that class too. And it's funny, all the schools, the aides go to the different classrooms. I'd go to the next class, and there would be an aide all covered in sawdust from Mr. Adams' class. And yeah, so I was there, and I went to, I have to open up my next thing. I'm sorry, I lost my paper. Thanks. Is the next one the math? Yeah, I went to Ms. Schill's and Camrat's class, and they were getting ready for an assessment. They were doing geometry. The kids were really engaged, so that was, they split the class so that they can give them better attention. And yeah, Spanish class, I don't know Spanish, but so like I said, I learned one word. I know French. Yeah, I know the French. But it was interesting watching them do those little label little magnetic boards. That's how she would have them spell out the words. And then Mr. Lewis had said, I don't know if that's the same political cartoon you had.
No, it was a different one.
Yeah, it was
Similar.
an interesting political cartoon, and watching the video they had on immigration was good. And then, oh yeah, the face class was interesting because they're getting ready to prep for making a bubble pizza, and Ms. Gabrick told me they had to explain everything because she'd have to say, do you know how to use a can opener? And 2 kids would raise their hand, no, they don't even know how to use a can opener, because some families don't cook anymore. So, yeah, this little boy holding his hand-sewn football, they were beautiful, all these different colors of footballs. They were pink and green and Packers and Badgers and just beautiful. So I think that was it, but I had a great time. The teachers are great, the aides work really hard, and the principals are great, so. And I have a visit next week at Franklin High School. So. And future agenda items, we have, were there any other school visits?
I went to the football game, does that count? No, okay.
I watched it on TV.
You watched it on TV? I went and sat in the stands. It was a great atmosphere, although not the end result that we wanted, but.
Popcorn? Pops popcorn there from Muskego?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you have Pops popcorn? I heard
No,
they were
I
there.
didn't.
Oh.
Future agenda items, Building and Grounds Annual Report, December 13th. Open enrollment seats, January 10th. Our audit report, January 10th. And then the educator effectiveness, January 10th.
The audit report you have January 24th.
You have January 24th?
Online, yeah.
Online, it is not in the printed.
Yeah, which one is it? Because the printed is
The
the 10th.
24th, that was a change. Our auditor called and said he couldn't make the 10th,
So it's the 24th.
the 24th.
Okay. And then, item 11, school board debriefing. Before I go on that, I just wanted to ask the board, do we still find value in this agenda item? Do we want to keep doing this? Because there are times we don't, most often we don't really follow this. So I just wanted to verify whether we want to still have it on the agenda. If there's consensus to have it, we'll keep it. If not,
We can keep it and
Keep it,
and do nothing with it. I mean, that's still fine.
okay, I was just gonna ask. Okay, does anyone have any comments for board meeting debriefing? Now you're stuck. Okay. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, we are adjourned at 9:01.